don't shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 7th of April. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, the FTSE 100 tanks to its lowest level in a year as the UK becomes the latest country to take President Trump's medicine. It comes amid global shockwaves following the tariff announcement. We've got all the latest reaction.
We do indeed, and them's the breaks. In response to the tariff turmoil, Keir Starmer is set to relax rules around the sale of EV cars, electric vehicles, as he gears up to announce bold changes later this afternoon. Is he going to U-turn on some of these net zero targets? What exactly is going to happen? We'll bring you the announcement live.
And an Islamic leader warns the Middle East conflict is fueling extremism here in Britain, continues to be exacerbating issues of division and integration. Do you agree? Has Keir Starmer given the game away on net zero?
Well, it's a nice to have now, clearly.
Well, I mean, for years they were saying this is an economic opportunity. For years, people like Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband were telling us this is going to be really good for the economy if we do net zero. It's a plus. There's no downside. It's going to be a wonderful thing. And now they're saying, oh, the economy's in a bit of turmoil. We better U-turn on some of this net zero stuff. It's quite expensive. I mean, pick a lane.
Yeah, well, they can't pick a lane, can they? It really depends on what they're thinking that day. But yes, if some turmoil in the markets and if some tariffs being slapped on industries in this country means that we can just U-turn and roll back on our net zero commitments, then how committed were we to begin with, and how important were they?
Well, if they were really this great benefit to the economy, surely we'd be doubling down on net zero now, right? we'd be bringing these targets forward, not backwards. We'd be saying no petrol cars can be allowed to be sold at all from next year. But instead, no, there's this watering down of this mandate. And the funny thing is, the Labour Party criticised Rishi Sunak for delaying the mandate, then brought it back. I mean, it's been utter chaos in terms of what we're telling our car industry to do, but not just telling them, we're also fining them if they don't sell enough electric vehicles.
But don't worry, Tom, because they're reducing the fine from £15,000 to £12,000. So there you go, a nice bargain bucket fine for those car manufacturers who dare to sell too many of the old petrol and diesel cars. But they're still keeping the ban. So far, that's what we're hearing, that they're still keeping the petrol and diesel ban on new cars to 2030, which is very close indeed, isn't it? Very close.
It's very close. It's only, 5 years away. But the hybrid ban will not come into effect.
So that's what we're... Go out and buy your hybrid.
There you go.
While you still can.
But I think this just does put the lie to what has been said for the last half decade. I mean, they're saying with one side of their mouth that net zero is great for the economy, but look at what they do. As soon as we're in an economic squall, they're like, well, actually, maybe it's not so good for the economy. Maybe we need to water this down.
I think a lot of it was always about virtue signalling for a lot of our politicians. I mean, the eco-activists, clearly they feel passionately about it, but for most of our politicians, you know, a way to appear strong on the international stage, I think.
At least some of the more extreme eco-activists say, well, yes, we're going to have to go without flights,
yes,
go without cars, and yes, we're going to have to grow our own food and our own allotment. It's quite a bit like Donald Trump, actually, in that respect. No imports of any food from anywhere in the world.
Well, I mean, should Keir Starmer just admit that net zero is not good for the economy and just scrap the lot? Let us know, gbnews.com/your say. Do you think Keir Starmer is going to give our economy the right medicine to combat Donald Trump's medicine? Let's see. Should we get the news headlines with Katie Bowen?
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. It's 4 minutes past 12. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. The FTSE 100 has hit a one-year low today, plunging by almost 6% amid global market turmoil. The index is still sharply down by around 4% as the fallout to President Trump's tariffs continue. If you're watching on television, you can see that sharp fall on the graph on your screen. Major stock indexes across the world have plunged, with the German, French and Asian markets all tumbling. Last night, US President Donald Trump said that tariffs were, quote, medicine for investors, adding he would not do a deal with China until the US trade deficit was addressed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in Washington, D.C. yesterday. He will meet President Trump later on to discuss those tariffs. Sticking with the economy, the Prime Minister has said that a new era of instability has pushed the government to go further and faster to protect British business, as he unveils new rules for car makers when upgrading to electric vehicles. In the wake of President Trump's 25% tariffs on all automotive imports, Sir Keir Starmer has said fines for manufacturers who do not sell enough electric cars will be relaxed, and supercar firms will be exempt from the rules. The move aims to help firms transition to electric vehicles. The Prime Minister is expected to reinstate the 2030 ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars, although luxury car makers will still be allowed to keep producing petrol cars beyond that deadline. Parliamentary Under-Secretary Lillian Greenwood explained the new measures.
We want to back our British car industry. We want to protect jobs. We want to create jobs. We have the opportunity for the UK to be global leaders in the transition to electric vehicles. And that's why we're giving them this certainty now, setting out and that clarity so they know exactly what they can do between now and 2030 and now and through to 2035.
A brief breaking update coming out of Russia this lunchtime. The Kremlin has said President Putin supports a ceasefire in Ukraine, but before that point can be reached, a number of questions have to be answered. The Kremlin went on to say that no one had given Russia answers to their questions about that possible ceasefire deal. On the global economy, the Kremlin said that the situation is very tense and, quote, full of negative expectations, adding that Russian economic authorities are monitoring the situation very closely, particularly in relation to oil prices. More on that news shortly. Elsewhere, healthcare workers will be sent from house to house in an NHS scheme aimed at reducing the number of people who are signed off work on sick leave. The programme will be rolled out in 25 areas across England. Health Secretary Wes Streeting said earlier versions of the scheme showed, quote, really encouraging signs in cutting the number of heavy users of services filling up A&E departments. 2 Labour MPs denied entry to Israel are on their way home today as Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch continues to face criticism for saying she's not surprised by Israel's decision to deport those MPs. Abtesam Mohammed, who represents Sheffield Central, and the MP for Early and Woodley, Yuan Yang, were deported after being accused of planning to spread anti-Israel hatred. Ms Badenoch said Israel has a right to control its borders, going on to describe the country as an ally and a democracy. Foreign Secretary David Lammy labelled her comments as disgraceful. Shadow Paymaster General Richard Holden said the Labour government have double standards over the issue.
Israel has a right to choose who goes into its country and not. It's the only open democracy in the Middle East. There is real criticism, believe me, within Israel both ways, and there's a proper democratic debate ongoing in there. I find it particularly bizarre when Labour MPs are calling for the Prime Minister of Israel to be arrested, that if he ever came to the UK, that at the same time they're saying that we can't even, and these aren't people being arrested, these people have been denied entry to Israel. It smacks of double standards from this Labour government to me.
And the King and Queen begin their state visit to Italy today, as they're set to travel to Rome and Ravenna. A meeting between the monarchs and Pope Francis has been postponed due to the pontiff's recent ill health. But King Charles and Queen Camilla will meet with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni as the King delivers an address to a joint session of Parliament. Their Majesties will celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary on the trip. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker is in Rome.
This is a chance for the UK government to use the King's soft power to strengthen relations between Britain and Italy. This is in the context, of course, of tariffs being imposed on both the EU and the UK by President Trump, the UK and Italy working together to combat illegal migration, and, of course, 2 NATO allies showing military strength in the face of Russian aggression in Eastern Europe. The King and Queen arriving later on today.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour, but let's go back to Tom and Emily and Good Afternoon Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 9 minutes past midday. Now, Donald Trump has declared the world must take his medicine as world markets continue to plummet following the US president's imposition of tariffs last week.
Yes, and Britain became the latest nation to feel the pinch of Mr. Trump's import taxes as the FTSE 100 slumped by 3% in the first few minutes of trading today, while the Hang Seng index in Hong Kong was down 13.22% upon closing, one of its worst days on record.
Well, this comes as Sir Keir Starmer prepares to announce a raft of new measures to boost British manufacturing here at home, including relaxing rules on fines for firms that don't sell enough electric cars.
Oh, what a prize, eh? To discuss this further, we are joined by British investment manager Justin Earthquart-Stewart. Justin, you've been in the game for a little while,
thank you.
I should say. Of course, there's a lot of alarm at the moment.
Yeah.
A lot of very worrying headlines that we're seeing about how the global market is crashing, how people are going to lose so much money. How worried should we be, Justin?
You shouldn't be worried by it. Actually, what's been happening here is the market has done incredibly well over the past few years, and long-term markets, despite all the crashes that people always talk about, amazingly enough, they actually recover. If you're actually wanting a short-term bet, that's why we have the Grand National. Investing in the stock market is a longer-term issue, and you make more money out of actually holding that and having the dividends and then compounding those dividends over time, rather than listening to some silly git in red braces telling you which stock to buy. Because
you can tell us if you like.
Well, shall we have a look at some of these stocks? Because right behind you, Justin, we've got the FTSE 100 on your screen. We can see this morning it opened.
Yep.
And I wonder if we can zoom in on the camera, because there was this sharp drop right there in the morning. I think that was at 8 a.m. when markets open.
Yep.
A completely sheer sharp drop. But throughout the course of the morning, it has recovered maybe half the losses that we saw immediately. What's going on?
Now, actually, what you'll see here, and this is where you look at the global markets, all those markets have been affected and they knock on to each other. Over the weekend, we had China and Japan. They had bank holidays or holidays last Friday. And so they had to catch up the rest of Europe.
So they dropped by more than we did.
More than that. Now, once you start seeing dramatic drops, by a few percentage, nothing disaster, but quite dramatic drops, you'll find that an awful lot of automatic trading will occur. So they're automatic sales just going through the system. And that's exactly what you've been seeing here. So is this a time when people sort of start a panic? Well, some people do panic. And frankly, they shouldn't panic, because we can look back and say, let's go back to around about April last year. Well, we're around about where that market is now. And so you've just knocked the top off. You've knocked the froth off the top of the market, nothing else. And what you should be doing, actually, is holding on, because you get your dividends. But if, as a good investor, you've been keeping cash on one side, you should take a bit of your cash, and if you're brave enough, put part of it in now. You never know if it's spot on the market or not. If it's not, don't worry, because in a few months' time, you put a little bit more in. It will pick back up again, and you'll be able to sit down and say, yes, I did make some money out of this.
I'm brave enough. Are you, Tom?
Well, I'm not the kind of sensible investor to have left a pile of cash on the side.
But Justin, let's make this about, because there's a lot of politics involved in this as well. We know the European Union wants to fight fire with fire. We know that China certainly does, at least for now. The UK seems to be taking a much more cautious approach. We're saying we're not really going to do anything for now. Considering our options for now, that seems quite sensible. Keir Starmer, however, is due to give a speech later on this afternoon on this show, so do stay tuned for that. It will be important. It will be important. But he seems to be a little bit confused in what he's telling us from what we know. Because he's saying more state intervention to protect our industries against these tariffs, but then he's also talking about cutting regulation and things like this and making things better for the car industry in other ways. Sort of free market / something else.
Do you remember years ago we used to have things known as British Leyland, producing some of the worst cars in the world. And, you know, we poured huge amounts of money into that. Then there were things called Hillman Imps, which are a particularly unpleasant car built just outside Glasgow, which effectively paid for that as well. You can still see the large lump of concrete outside Glasgow Airport where it was built. I'm afraid government intervention into individual areas is normally a disaster. And what you have to do is actually realise maybe that's not the right area for us to be in. Now, if it's unfair, because, for instance, we charge too much for electricity in this country as opposed to Europe, then you can see, actually, the steel industry does need more support there because the market is actually, well, the structure we've given them is unfair. But when it comes to try and sit there and say we'll be able to make electric cars cheaper than China en masse, the answer is that's going to be quite difficult.
And when we're looking at retaliatory tariffs, I was looking at the top imports that the UK has from the US this morning. Number 1, crude oil. Number 2, power generators. Number 3, pharmaceuticals and medicines. Number 4, refined oil. I mean, if we are going to tax this stuff, that is a tax on the NHS, that is making energy even more expensive in the UK as well. I mean, it's simply not an option for government.
Tariffs are really stupid because what happens is a tariff is a brake on the market. If you do it too much, it breaks the market. You know, what you want to do is, in any economy, the speed of money going through the system, the velocity of the economy. And so a brake on that slows that up. Now, if you slow that up, effectively what you're saying is we want lower growth and ending up with a recession. You don't want tariffs to be doing that. You want diametrically the opposite. So I would say to our Prime Minister, look, stop worrying about trying to fight back at the moment. Let the rest of the EU go and do that, and everyone else argue it. We're not in that position.
Now, a quick final word, because we don't have long, but the New York Stock Exchange will open in about the middle of this show. What are you expecting to see in New York?
It'll probably go down a little bit. But bear in mind, that Stock Exchange floor is the most fabulous piece of theatre. They run around with their little machines.
We're looking forward to the ding-ding-ding of the bell.
And you see, that's brilliant. Everyone loves that. The London Stock Exchange did away with all of that. We have no theatre. And that's what you want to be able to engage. People like investing in shares because they know about them.
Exciting.
In this country, years ago, a long time ago, we had 45 stock exchanges. Most of them were useless. But the idea was they were local exchanges. You knew the companies, you knew the people, you had a connection with it. Now, most people couldn't even tell me where the London Stock Exchange is.
No, and you look at the London Stock Exchange, it's all just screens now. It's a lot less fun than it perhaps was in the heyday.
We still do our best.
We do, yeah.
Yes.
Very well. Well, Justin Stewart, thanks so much for talking us through that.
Thank you so much. And if you want to get involved, there is a poll going at the moment of whether the reaction to all this should be for Brits to buy more British. What do you think about that? Is that the right way to try and tackle some of these tariffs, or is it totally irrelevant, really? Let us know. Should Brits buy more British products?
Well, let's get some more political reaction now with the Spectator's political correspondent, James Heal. James, the Prime Minister could be in for an embarrassing U-turn today, but he's trying to sell it as stability. What's going on?
Well, Tom, like a lot of the Prime Minister's calculations, this is a matter of expedience in difficult circumstances. Before Christmas, there was a consultation on the electric vehicle mandate and the plans to impose new taxes on those cars and fines for those manufacturers who don't manufacture enough green cars by 2030. This has now been bundled up into an announcement to Donald Trump's tariffs. So a pre-existing policy that predated Donald Trump has now been tied in with that. And really what Keir Starmer is trying to do with that is show that the UK is able to kind of shelter its companies from the Trump storm, is able to stand up for British manufacturers. But really, I think, thus far I've been a little surprised at, first of all, how weak the kind of policies that have been set out really are. And second of all, the rhetoric. I mean, the rhetoric around the end of globalisation, we heard that in opposition. We've been hearing it in sort of soft left publications for years. So really, I think that, again, it shows the Prime Minister's trying to do his best, but his best probably won't be enough to insulate British industry from the storm.
Also, James, I mean, most people, I'm not sure, will be thinking, what exactly does Keir Starmer mean when he uses a word like globalisation? It has all sorts of definitions, connotations. People think it means different things. But also, on these specific changes he's making for the car industry, supposedly backing British business in that area, very minor changes. I mean, will they make a big, dramatic difference to the output of these businesses?
I think it's unlikely, Emily, because I think you've already seen industry come out and complain it's just mere tinkering. And I think you've got to remember, for the poor car manufacturers, first, I think the first EV ban was announced in 2018. Boris Johnson increased it from 2035 to 2030. Then there was discussion around Rishi Sunak's changes. These plans for cars take years to get in place, and there's been endless chop and change here. So I think Labour, what they're trying to do is get around the fact that they had their commitment to electric vehicles by 2030 and a petrol ban by that, by changing the rules on vans instead. But actually, overall, I don't think the car manufacturing industry is all that impressed today. And actually, what we're going to see is sort of another insubstantial response to changing circumstances. And again, it makes a mockery, I think, as one of your previous guests said, about how we'll talk about Rishi Sunak watering down the targets in June 2023. I think that actually shows that really what we're dealing with is, again, the need for green priorities to take a back seat in terms of economic precedence.
Yeah, it really does seem that there is perhaps a realisation in government, if not through rhetoric, but through policy, that instead of an economic opportunity, net zero, whilst it might be the right thing to do in the eyes of these people, they're starting to realise it's actually a cost to this country rather than a benefit.
Well, I think there was some really interesting polling a couple of weeks ago by the Onward think tank, which showed that actually, most voters clearly care about climate change, want the government to take action, and yet when it comes to a real preference, actually are not that much willing to pay much more in taxes. I think it was only a very small minority, and you have to wonder whether those are going to be Green Party voters or even Labour voters when it comes to actually dealing with this, because I think the government has seen repeatedly that voters may say on paper they want to have higher taxes for X or Y, or willing to pay costs, but when it comes to it, they increasingly feel resentful of that. So I think that what the government's trying to do here is respond to two different things, one of which is to take into account manufacturing concerns, and the other which use a political point to say that they're standing up to Donald Trump. So again, with Keir Starmer, it's all about responding to different things at different times, while trying to keep his green flank and Ed Miliband on side too.
Well, there you go. That's a lot to balance, or perhaps juggle. James Hill, thank you very much indeed, political correspondent at The Spectator. Yes, it's very easy, Tom, isn't it, to say I support net zero, but do you support the taxes that come with it? I
think generally what the issue is that everyone supports it as long as someone else pays for it.
Oh, absolutely, like with most things, really.
Right, everyone would like something for free at the end of the day. But what do ordinary tradespeople think about the government's plans to boost British manufacturing? Let's go live to Cheshire, speak to our reporter Steve Bennett. He's been out and about, chatting to people on the road. Steve, what have you found?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Well, the workers, the everyday white van man and woman, they are pleased with what's been mentioned today. They say that it protects their industry, protects their livelihood, and basically eases the pressure on them so they don't have to think about changing their vans, changing their cars. And they also had concerns about if they had to change to, say, an electric vehicle, for if you're a plasterer, if you're a joiner, can those cars handle the kind of load that need to be taken? So I caught up with a few of them here on this industrial estate in Cheshire earlier on, and here's exactly what they had to say. Some reaction to the news today that you can carry on driving your van. There's not going to be a ban on them till at least 2035. How does that make you feel?
It's a big weight off our shoulders, really. I can carry on just working. I don't need to worry about it. And it's a big expense looking for a new van. So we're happy that we can keep using the same one and focus on earning money.
Well, it just means we can carry on working, keep cracking on. It's a big expense if we had to fork out the money for a new van, so it's nice to be able to keep on using this.
And as self-employed builders, how important is that to make sure that all your money goes to you?
Yeah, well, like you said, you use a van every single day, and the money is especially needed. You need it for materials, for everything, so it's really important. You don't have to use it for something else.
That I don't have to buy a whole new fleet of vehicles. I think that's the biggest thing to take away from it. That we already lease all our vehicles, but to take all of our vehicles and then change them all to electric, and then especially when we're carrying heavy goods, they wouldn't be suitable for our business whatsoever. So the fact that we can still keep going with fossil fuels is important at the minute anyway.
Just makes it a lot easier. Electric cars are not really up to it at the moment. So obviously they're doing a lot of driving here and there, picking stuff up. The electric cars are not up to it. So for me, I can keep this van for as long as I can, and then pod on through using the diesel. It's a lot easier for me personally.
So they have it, the views of the workers here on this industrial estate in Cheshire, and they pretty much are delighted with this announcement. Buys them more time, eases the pressure on them, particularly if their company has a fleet of vehicles as well. That would put real extra pressure and strain on that company. So overall, very positive following this announcement from the government.
Steve, really great insight there from, everyday people who need to use their vehicles for their work. Thank you so much, Steve Bennett, there. I mean, you're messing with people's lives with all of these targets. People have to plan whether they're going to get a new van or a new car or a new whatever.
But this is the thing. I mean, you've got government ministers out and about today on channels, including this one, saying this has provided stability. And it's like...
Till next time.
What do you mean? You've just changed the date.
I know. And you feel like a right mug if you just invested God knows how much into this new shiny EV, isn't it? Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. What do you make of what those white van men had to say there? We've got lots more coming up, though. The head of the Muslim World League is warning that the conflict in Gaza is fueling division and extremism here in Britain between Muslims and non-Muslims. Apparently, lots of Muslims are now disillusioned, particularly young ones, with basically everything. Do you agree?
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
This is a non-traditional relationship coach.
Basically anything that doesn't fit societal norms. So if you are anything that is other than heterosexual, or if you have multiple partners.
And is there growing demand for that kind of service? And if so, why?
Very much so. People are starting to realise that we've been kind of indoctrinated from birth to be monogamous and follow societal norms within relationships, myself included, I hasten to add. It was about 6 years ago I discovered that I was polyamorous through a lot of friends that are poly, and it just developed from there basically. And there's not many relationship coaches that are able to deal with non-traditional relationships. We are very much trained to be traditional relationship coaches.
Yeah.
So I'm an out-of-the-box thinker on that one.
Nadia, surely it's just being a bit greedy, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think monogamy can be beautiful and wonderful. And for most people, myself included, that's the type of relationship that fulfills me. I would not be interested in an open relationship. I think you're right. We're not naturally monogamous as a species. If we were, we would mate for life and it wouldn't even be an issue. But the fact that we're not means that we're not monogamous by nature. So monogamy is a choice. And I think in a relationship, that's one of the most exciting and special choices that you can make. You wake up every day, you carry on with your day, and you choose to only be with one person. I think that is so unbelievably special and would make me feel a lot more fulfilled than having multiple partners.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:26, going on 27. This is a bit worrying. The head of the Muslim World League has spoken out and has warned that the disillusionment of particularly young Muslims could be a security risk in this country. And he's warning that the conflict in Gaza in particular is fueling this particular division and also extremism in this country. And therefore, he's saying that the government must consider integration a national security issue.
That's right. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Karim Al Issa says both Muslims and non-Muslims should focus on domestic issues of shared concern, as a political situation outside should not interfere with integration inside.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Taj Haji from the Oxford Institute for British Islam. Dr. Taj, thank you very much indeed. This is the problem, though, isn't it? Foreign conflicts are interfering with integration in this country and can lead to extremist views. What do you think?
Clearly, the foreign element is a big issue, but I think the lack of integration actually predates all this stuff. I mean, many Muslims for the last 2-3 generations have not integrated. And I think this Gaza issue has only exacerbated things and is looking for an excuse not to become integrated. I think what's important is that Muslims in Britain should understand either they are fully-fledged patriotic citizens or they should take a hike. I think what's important is that Muslims need to be fully integrated here. Clearly, what is happening in Palestine, Gaza, Israel right now is not helping matters. But I think for this man, there was a Saudi political appointee by the Saudi government for him to come along and tell us what to do. In fact, we should also look at the background of this World Muslim League. This is a Saudi-funded outfit, and they are responsible for labeling all dissidents and as heretics and people who are not part of Islam. So they have a track record of intolerance within their organization, and this intolerance.
Dr. Taj, doesn't that then speak just how? Doesn't that just speak to how serious it is if even this institute is saying there are problems of integration? If even this Saudi-funded organisation is now saying the same?
Yeah, undoubtedly, no one is denying that it's not important. I think that this issue of integration, like I've said earlier, predates all of this stuff from Gaza and Palestine and Israel. This thing has only exacerbated things. So I think, if we want to sort this thing out, we can't just say, listen, let's ignore the Gaza thing, let's ignore Israel, Palestine, whatever, and somehow by magic it will come right. We need to go back to why young Muslims in particular are feeling alienated and not part and parcel of the society.
I think you're right that foreign conflicts have been used to almost excuse extremism in this country, whether it's the current conflict ongoing or Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever, or even before that, have been used. What do you make of some of these recent surveys then? Because we're talking about how integration has been a problem for a long time. So this latest survey found that 71% of Muslims identified themselves primarily as Muslim rather than British, English, Scottish. Is that a problem?
Yeah, I think that's a huge problem. It's very worrying. I mean, unless we have a sense of patriotism, not just amongst Muslims, but also amongst the wider society. For example, I know many Brits, whether it's Irish, Scottish, or Welsh, they don't even feel patriotic about this country. So I mean, that's one level. But I think it's also important for Muslims to be very patriotic. I'm an immigrant to this society, and I feel very patriotic and very proud to be British, and I'll do whatever I can do to defend this country against all forms of extremism, both here and abroad.
I wonder, Taj, does it help when our political leaders spend so much time talking about what's going on in Israel, Palestine? So, for example, Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, mentioning the Gaza conflict in his Eid message. And also many a Labour MP and independent MPs in particular using a lot of their time in the House of Commons to raise questions about this foreign conflict, often linking it to their Muslim constituents as well. Does this not continue to drive a wedge, and our politicians are doing it?
Absolutely, and let's take Sadiq Khan as an example. He denied the existence of grooming gangs in London. Now, I mean, how can he do that? You know, I mean, the point is we need to call a spade a spade. And when Muslims are responsible for certain ugly things, hideous developments in society, we need to call them out. And yes, we can't just ignore all foreign conflicts, because right now, whether you and I like it, Ukraine is on the map, Gaza's on the map. Unless we are putting our heads in the sand, we can't really function in this society. So yes, we should address the issues in Ukraine, Gaza, wherever else. But that shouldn't be at the expense of creating greater alienation and animosity between and amongst Muslims and the wider society.
OK, very interesting. Dr. Taj Haji, thank you very much. Appreciate your time as always. You're from the Oxford Institute for British Islam.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more coming on today's programme. Indeed, we're going to be live on Downing Street. Our political reporter has just been in an official briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesperson. Lots to come out today. Of course, this U-turn on green policies and also reaction to market turmoil. What on earth will be said? That after your headlines with Katie.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your top stories this hour. The FTSE 100 has hit a one-year low today, plunging by almost 6% amid global market turmoil. The index is still sharply down by around 4% as the fallout to President Trump's tariffs continue. If you're watching on television, you can see that sharp fall on the graph on your screen, with the index now recovering slightly. Major stock indexes across the world have plunged, with the German, French and Asian markets all tumbling. Last night, US President Donald Trump said that tariffs were, quote, medicine for investors, adding he would not do a deal with China until the US trade deficit was addressed. Downing Street has said this lunchtime that a global trade war is not in anybody's interest, adding that the UK wants to see reduced barriers to trade and also work more closely with the EU on trade. We'll bring you more on that line shortly. Sticking with the economy, the Prime Minister has said that a new era of instability has pushed the government to go further and faster to protect British business, as he unveils new rules for car makers when upgrading to electric vehicles. In the wake of President Trump's 25% tariffs on all automotive imports, Sir Keir Starmer has said fines for manufacturers who do not sell enough electric cars will be relaxed, and supercar firms will be exempt from the rules. The move aims to help firms transition to electric vehicles. The Prime Minister is expected to reinstate the 2030 ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars, although luxury car makers will still be allowed to keep producing petrol cars beyond that deadline. Parliamentary Under-Secretary Lillian Greenwood explains the new measures.
We want to back our British car industry. We want to protect jobs. We want to create jobs. We have the opportunity for the UK to be global leaders in the transition to electric vehicles. And that's why we're giving them this certainty now, setting out and that clarity so they know exactly what they can do between now and 2030 and now and through to 2035.
And the Kremlin has said President Putin supports a ceasefire in Ukraine, but before that point can be reached, a number of questions have to be answered. The Kremlin went on to say that no one had given Russia answers to their questions about that possible ceasefire deal. On the global economy, the Kremlin said that the situation is very tense and, quote, full of negative expectations, adding that Russian economic authorities are monitoring the situation very closely, particularly in relation to oil prices. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are some cancelled P&O Irish Sea sailings this morning between Cairn Ryan and Larne because of a technical problem. A1 in West Yorkshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident at Barnsdale Bar. In South Yorkshire, the A614 is closed each way between the Blackstone roundabout and Hatfield Woodhouse after an accident. In Gwynedd, the A4086 is closed each way between Llanberis and Bryn Raefhile after an accident causing queues. In Norfolk, the A47 is partly blocked westbound by an accident at the A17 pullover roundabout at Kings Lynn. And there are some cancelled Stena Line sailings between Fishguard and Rosslare because of an operational incident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past midday. We're going to go live to Downing Street now. Our reporter, Adam Cherry, has just been freed from a briefing there. You've been speaking with the Prime Minister's spokesman for some time, Adam. First of all, has the Prime Minister managed to speak with Donald Trump over this weekend? We're told that they've got a very strong diplomatic relationship. Has there been a phone call?
No, afraid not. I think those phone calls happen at the whims of the President rather than the Prime Minister. So no update on that, but the Downing Street spokesperson says, we will update you in the usual way when those calls happen. I think the suggestion is, you know, it depends on when Donald Trump picks up the phone and gets a bit bored. So no conversation yet. More broadly, however, the Downing Street spokesperson says we want to see reduced barriers to trade. And in regards to this EU reset, you know, over the last few months we've heard Downing Street say they want a closer trading relationship with Europe. Someone asked today in that briefing, does that mean taking another look at the customs union? They're ruling that out. They're saying, no, we don't want to go backwards when it comes to Brexit. We're looking forward. So they are ruling out rejoining the customs union as a result of the turbulence from these tariffs. It underlines the importance of trading relationships around the world, is what they're saying, and they will not provide any running commentary on the discussions regarding that trade or that elusive trade agreement, the prosperity deal with the US. They say they're engaging in conversations at all levels. It doesn't sound to me, guys, like they're in any position to get that over the line in the short term. So really we're just waiting to hear what the Prime Minister has to say later this afternoon regarding car manufacturing. It doesn't sound like we're getting that free trade agreement that we've been looking for of any description for quite some time. We're just going to have to grin and bear it and not reciprocate with any sort of tariffs of our own at this point.
Yeah, and we're hearing that Keir Starmer is very much going to want to get across to the public that he's the man to back British business against Donald Trump's tariffs. Of course, difficult to argue considering all the taxes that are going up on businesses and the impact of minimum wage, etc. But he's sort of teasing this idea of an industrial strategy, isn't he, to sort of protect British industry. Have we actually heard anything about what that might include?
No, they're not getting ahead of it. They say more broadly it's a 10-year strategy to support British industries. But in terms of specific details, we're just going to have to wait and see, as per usual. They don't want to reveal anything ahead of time, so I'm afraid I don't have anything specific on that. They're just saying it's a broader 10-year view at industrial strategy rather than the short-termist approach that they say previous governments have taken.
This all, of course, is in the context of much broader government strategy, not least defence strategy. Of course, we've heard that we're going to be spending a lot more money on defence. One story in the papers, of course, over the weekend has been some of that money might go towards Russian-made jets for the Red Arrows. Did the Prime Minister's spokesman have anything to say on this story that potentially we're buying Russian planes?
Yeah, so they referred to the Ministry of Defence and they say this is pure speculation. Although they're not getting ahead of any future procurement competition, they want to make it very clear that they have not procured any military equipment from Russia and are advising us to steer away from those reports. So that, again, just stress at the moment, this is pure speculation at this point. It wouldn't get drawn on any hypotheticals on whether they would at any point take Russian-designed planes in the future, but they said, nonetheless, that they do not procure any military equipment from Russia.
Yeah, apparently these are Putin's favourite planes that we're talking about here.
The fact that they couldn't deny that straight out there to Adam and his colleagues is pretty extraordinary. But Adam Cherry, thanks live from Downing Street for giving us that update there.
Well, do you understand what Keir Starmer's trying to do here? I think it's just posturing, isn't it? He's trying to, look like he's doing something meaningful. But you've got to wait for the industrial strategy. We're going to tinker a tiny bit with those net zero targets, and that's about it.
Look, there is no industrial...
Globalisation is dead, apparently.
There is no industrial strategy that will do this country any good at all that is not cheaper energy. That is the only industrial strategy this country needs. Once you reduce the cost of energy, then you can have more manufacturing, then you can have more business, then you can have cheaper things. As long as we have the highest industrial cost of energy in the world, we have no industrial strategy at all. You can tinker with skills and degrees and apprenticeships all you want. No one's going to make anything in this country unless you have cheaper energy.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But that ties in with the old net zero debate. It doesn't look like he's going to be U-turning on that anytime soon, at least the target. But if you were in search of some springtime sunshine elsewhere, somewhere where there is an industrial strategy that works, perhaps, here are some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, if you are off on your Easter break, it is colder in the southeast Mediterranean at the moment. Having a look at the detail, we've got some colder air coming down from the Arctic, so actually much below average for the time of year. Across parts of Italy, there is some sunshine, especially then more so across France, parts of Spain and Portugal. But towards the far west, we will see outbreaks of rain and some showers. And then as we go through the week, many places will see some sunshine before it turns a little bit downhill later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more coming up on the programme. Indeed, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy and the Conservative leader Tammy Badenoch continue their row over Israel's Member of Parliament ban. Yes, 2 Labour MPs banned from visiting Israel over the weekend. We'll have more on that war of words after this.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office on this sunny Monday. Barely any cloud around for most of us today, and in the sunshine it is going to feel pretty warm indeed. Currently, high pressure is firmly in control. It has been for a little while and is going to continue to dominate our weather as we go through much of this week. As a result, it is going to be largely sunny. A bit of cloud pushing into some North Sea coastal areas perhaps, and also around Orkney and Shetland. Otherwise, barely any cloud around, lots of blue skies. Just worth bearing in mind, UV levels will be moderate. Temperatures are going to be, well, on the warm side, peaking around 17 or 18 Celsius towards some western parts, most places getting into the mid-teens. And the breeze that was a little bit nagging for some places over the weekend, that's generally dropped out, though a bit of a breeze towards some eastern and southern coastal parts. Staying fine as we go through towards the end of the day, still though a bit more cloud through this evening for Orkney and Shetland. Otherwise, barely any cloud around. So it is going to be a fine evening and also a fine start to the night across, well, much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales. As we go through the night with clear skies and relatively light winds, yes, it is going to turn a little bit chilly. And with that, we could see a few pockets of mist and fog developing, a bit of fog perhaps pushing into some North Sea coastal parts around the Humber maybe, and a few patches elsewhere. But on the whole, it is going to be a fine night, if not a little bit chilly. Temperatures in some places just about dipping below freezing, so a touch of frost in some prone spots. Otherwise then, as we go through tomorrow, and any mist and fog will clear, burn away as we go through the morning, though across some eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, perhaps some of the fog could linger for a little while longer here. Otherwise, yes, again, another largely fine day. Perhaps a bit more high-level cloud around, so the sunshine a little bit hazier, but again, temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens Celsius.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 48 minutes past midday. Now, the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, is calling on Labour MPs to put UK national interest first and do their jobs instead of promoting Hamas propaganda in Parliament.
Yeah, she was responding to criticism from Foreign Secretary David Lammy regarding her support for Israel's decision to deport two Labour MPs, Abtissam Mohammed and Juan Yang. There they are on the screen.
Well, earlier, the Shadow Paymaster General Richard Holden backed his leader's controversial stance.
When people say, and this is quite clearly what's happened, that Israel is a terrorist state, as one of these MPs said, when Israel goes out there to cold-bloody murder children in cold blood, I mean, those words have consequences. Just as back in the day, you know, we had MPs in the UK from Sinn Féin, IRA, Martin McGuinness and others. You know, you wouldn't expect those people to have necessarily been welcomed across the globe internationally. These MPs, just because they happen to be MPs, shouldn't be welcomed internationally, and we should also be able to deny people entry to our country. Perhaps, I don't know, members of the Iranian parliament. We have no idea what some of those people might have been involved in.
Well, that was punchy from the Shadow Paymaster General. Let's speak to the former Attorney General now. So Michael Ellis joins us in the studio. Thanks for joining us. I mean, this is a controversial response from Kemi Badenoch yesterday. It said a lot of the cat's among the pigeons.
Well, you know what, Tom? I think the controversy actually is what David Lammy said. By calling her remarks disgraceful, I actually think what's disgraceful is the hypocrisy. I mean, people do hate hypocrisy in politicians, don't they? And what we've seen in this country is this country exercising its right to ban people from coming in when we have made a decision, including the last Labour government in 2008 banned an Israeli MP from entering this country, way back in 2008. And in 2009, they also, the last Labour government, and David Lammy was part of that government in a junior position, but part of it, we banned a Dutch MP from entering this country. So we here in the United Kingdom have banned people that we don't want to come in. Under the Immigration Act 1971, by the way, we have the legal right to do that, the exercise purely of the government's discretion. But all of a sudden, David Lammy, when it's about Israel, then it's a disgraceful thing to do. Well, that's hypocrisy writ large, isn't it?
Oh, I think so. And all Kemi Badenoch really said was that a country has a right to do what it likes with its borders.
Emily, you're absolutely right. And just because we have obviously lost control of our borders in this country under this government, it doesn't mean other countries should also lose control of their borders. It's an inherent right of every sovereign state to control who comes in. The Americans are doing this right now, by the way, under the Trump administration. They're taking a very robust approach with their visas. After all, you're a guest when you visit another country. And just like a guest in your own home, you're not obliged to admit that person. So different rules apply. A country, whether it be France, the UK, Israel, or whoever else, they can choose for themselves who to let in and who not to let in.
And yet is there not a point of status here? The mother of all parliaments, the cradle of democracy, England, Westminster, all of it. Shouldn't we have perhaps a stronger backing of our members of parliament to be free to travel the world without let or hindrance, as it says as it used to say on our passports? You know, His Britannic Majesty demands the
requests and requires.
Requests and requires now. I think it used to be demands back in more imperial days.
Yes.
But surely there is something there in the right of people elected to our parliament to travel the world.
Legally, there isn't, and that's the simple fact of the matter. They don't have any special status over and above you or I. And the truth of the matter is you'd hope, really, that David Lammy would learn from the mistake that he made in 2018 when he tweeted something about Donald Trump never being welcome in this country. And of course, Labour are having to very quickly backtrack on that because they're hoping that President Trump will come here. So you do have to be very careful in these senior positions to actually behave in a responsible fashion with regard to the position that you're holding.
And I mean, I do take your point, because it would be nice if all of our MPs were, welcome in every country and we were seen in such high status. But Israel clearly think these two Labour MPs are a total menace. They say they've been accusing Israel of false claims. They're calling for a boycott. They're spreading lies, promoting sanctions against Israeli ministers, supporting campaigns aimed at boycotting the entire state of Israel. Well, I'd be thinking at border control, why do you want to come here again?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, but what it boils down to, Emily, is that a country has a right to say whether it wants somebody in or not. That has an inalienable right to do that, and it's up to them to make that judgment.
Very quickly, though, because we don't have much time, should Kemi Badenoch have effectively taken the Israeli side over the British government side?
She's absolutely right to have done so in this case. It's not about taking sides. It's about what's fair, what's not hypocritical. She knew that Israel should be able to control its borders because we would like to be able to control our borders as well, and it would be very hypocritical for her to say, no, they must do as we say, but we'll do something different.
Perhaps we've let in too many Britain-hating politicians over our time. Thank you very much indeed, Michael Ellis. Fantastic to have you on the show, as always.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come, so don't move a muscle. Yes, we're building up to a live speech from the Prime Minister on the net zero U-turn that some say he's about to make. Don't move a muscle.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a...
Hello again. Here's your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. More sunshine to come as we go through the next few days. Worth bearing in mind, though, our nights will be a little bit chilly, and with that, we could see a few pockets of mist and fog. But the reason why it's mostly fine at the moment, well, high pressure. It's not going anywhere for the time being, so it's going to continue to dominate our weather, bringing the settled conditions and the largely sunny skies. The sunny skies then leads to a clear night for most of us, but a cloud around Orkney and Shetland, and worth bearing in mind there'll be some low clouds, some mist, some fog developing around the Humber as well, and a few pockets of mist and fog could develop elsewhere, but most of us having a dry, clear night. With that then, temperatures taking a bit of a dip, so a chilly start to tomorrow morning. There could be a touch of frost in some prone spots. As we go through the day, though, most of any mist and fog patches will gradually clear away as we go through the morning. There may be a zone of something a little bit cloudier around the London area for a time, but otherwise lots of sunshine on offer. Some Eastern parts of Scotland, maybe into northeast England and around the Humber. Here, any mist and fog could take a little while to clear as we go through the day, but otherwise it is going to be a fine picture and plenty of sunshine. Yet again, away from perhaps the far north of Scotland, still a bit of nagging cloud around, similar to today really. Otherwise, as we go through the day, yes, lots of sunshine on offer, a bit more high-level cloud than we'll have seen through today, and so the sunshine may be a bit hazy at times, but nonetheless plenty of blue skies on offer, and with that it is going to feel pretty warm indeed. Temperatures similar, maybe even a touch higher than today, so highs of around 18 or 19 Celsius, pretty warm indeed. Staying fine as we go through the end of tomorrow as well. More fine weather through the evening and overnight. Again, a few pockets of mist and fog perhaps as we go overnight into Wednesday. But high pressure is going to stick around for a little while yet, so it is staying generally dry and often sunny as we go through the rest of the week. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Band. Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
So you began to lose the sight of one eye when you were a child. When did you begin to learn Braille?
So, back in the 80s, sight loss wasn't talked about. I was in the back of the classroom, blind in one eye, had the patches. Always wanted to be an artist, from day dot, as they say. And I did a degree in model making because I thought I'd get a skill base behind me because then I could do all the crazy stuff later. And I became a dental model maker, and around about 12 years ago, I noticed a dark shadow in my right eye, or left eye. Right, left and right is not very good for me. That was it. It was like, how do I want to be the artist I want to be as a 6-year-old? So about 6 years ago, my friend gave me a Perkins typewriter. Now, have you ever come across one of those before?
No, tell me about it.
So this machine has not changed since the 1950s. It's like an organ with 6 keys, because Braille is a mathematical language. So when you ever have a play on one, you can learn it really quickly. So I learnt Braille in 3 weeks because I saw it as a pattern.
How extraordinary. You learnt it in 3 weeks?
Yeah, because I didn't see it as a letter. Because as an artist, my brain is geared to, wired to patterns. So after 3 weeks, I was like, oh, why can't this be an art form? Just like a typewriter we use as a letter, I can use a dot, and for me, the dot has more power.
But that spells love in Braille, yes?
It does.
Take me through it then.
So the idea is iconic print, 1970s, LOVE. I've just Brailleised it, and then by giving it another colour, if I told everyone that this one is called bubblegum, I'm sure all at a certain age group would know a certain bubblegum brand that this inspired me. So the idea is I'm going to do loads of these, and just by changing that word, we'll have the colours. So I see colours through words as a blind person now.
Yes. Now, this is a very tactile piece.
Yes, you can touch
it,
in
other words, yes, this is all in high relief, so my fingers are tracing this.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 7th of April. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, the FTSE 100 not looking great. It's tanked to its lowest levels in a year as the UK becomes the latest country to take President Trump's medicine. It comes amid global shockwaves following the tariff announcement. We'll bring you the latest reaction.
And them's the breaks. In response to the tariff turmoil, Keir Starmer is set to relax rules around EV electric vehicle cars. As he gears up to announce bold changes later this afternoon, is he U-turning on elements of net zero? We'll bring you the announcement live.
And an Islamic leader warns about the disillusionment of Muslims in this country that could be a national security risk. He says the Middle East conflict is fueling extremism here in Britain.
Now our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins us for some breaking news.
Well, confirmation that the Southport inquiry, that statutory inquiry that was announced by Yvette Cooper back in January, has now begun today. They have appointed the chair of the inquiry, Sir Adrian Fulford, a well-known and well-respected former senior judge, served for a number of years in the appeal court, so he will chair the statutory inquiry, and it will be in two phases. The first phase is going to examine the events around the attack by Axel Rudikabana on that Taylor Swift themed dance class in Southport in the summer of last year. And when I talk about all of the issues surrounding that, what we mean, of course, is the background as well to this individual. The fact that he had been radicalised, had become increasingly extreme in his views. He had been referred to the counter-extremism programme PREVENT on not one but three separate occasions. On each occasion, we now know that PREVENT did not take that on and effectively passed it on to other agencies who likewise did very little, if anything, meaningful to deal with this individual before he then went on to murder those three young girls and to injure 8 other young girls and 2 adults. So all of the controversial issues about what the authorities did or didn't do to engage and to direct this young man away from this murderous action will be examined in the first part of this inquiry, which we're told is now underway today. Then the second phase will be looking at that issue of younger people increasingly turning to violent extremism, whether they're aligned to a political grouping such as Islamist extremism or far-right extremism or not, what to do about an increasing cohort of younger individuals who seem to be attracted to violent extremism, sometimes being fed off what they read on the internet. But, as I say, the breaking news, significant news today that long-awaited Southport inquiry, the statutory inquiry, is now underway, and the new chair is Sir Adrian Fulford.
Very interesting. Mark, so it won't touch on at all the unrest that followed the attack?
We're told that is not in the terms of the inquiry. I'm going to read into it a bit further, but it seems to be talking about the incident itself and Axel Rudikabana's path. No word as to whether the riots that followed that will be included. But that's certainly not the second part of the inquiry either, because, as I say, that's going to look at the whole issue of younger people being attracted to violent extremism.
Now, of course, it hasn't been that long since the head of PREVENT stepped down, largely in response to this terrible incident in Southport. I wonder, has the cart already gone before the horse, if you see what I mean? I mean, normally what happens is heads roll after an inquiry, and yet we've already seen one head roll before this inquiry started.
I think with regard to PREVENT, this, you know, it wasn't just Southport. There are other issues that have really raised some serious questions over PREVENT. The killer of David Amos, another example of someone who was referred to PREVENT and no real meaningful engagement with this individual had taken place before he then went on a further disintegration in terms of his path towards violent extremism and terrorism in that particular case. So there was a number of incidents with PREVENT. I think the feeling of government was, and the Home Secretary was, that there needed to be some radical and quick action with regards to prevent. But of course, the lessons learned will form part of the inquiry, which of course is going to conclude much further down the road.
And this is the thing, we have so many inquiries, don't we, as a country? They go on for months, they cost millions of taxpayers' money, and the desperate hope is that lessons will be learned and these things won't happen again. Mark White, thank you very much. We'll catch up with you later, I'm sure. Do let us know if you have any more updates on this inquiry. But let's quickly get to the headlines with Katie.
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. It's 6 minutes past 1. Your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. A brief recap of what you've just heard now with Mark White. Some breaking news this lunchtime. The Home Office has announced that the first phase of the inquiry into the Southport attack will begin today. The Home Secretary has appointed Sir Adrian Fulford as the chair of that inquiry. The first phase will establish a definitive account of the events leading up to the 2024 attack, and a second, later phase will consider the wider issues of children and young people being drawn into extreme violence. Axel Rudder-Cabana was jailed for a minimum of 52 years following the murders of 7-year-old Elsie Dott-Stankham, 6-year-old BB King and 9-year-old Alice De Silva Aguiar. We'll bring you more on that breaking story with our Home and Security Editor Mark White shortly. The FTSE 100 has hit a one-year low today, plunging by almost 6% amid global market turmoil. The index is still sharply down by around 4% as the fallout to President Trump's tariffs continue. If you're watching on television, you can see the sharp fall on your graph on the screen, with the index now slightly recovering. Major stock indexes across the world have plunged, with the German, French and Asian markets all tumbling. Last night, US President Donald Trump said that tariffs were, quote, medicine for investors, adding he would not do a deal with China until the US trade deficit was addressed. Downing Street has said this lunchtime that a global trade war is not in anybody's interest, adding that the UK wants to see reduced barriers to trade and also work more closely with the EU on trade, but ruled out rejoining the customs union. Sticking with the economy, the Prime Minister has said that a new era of instability has pushed the government to go further and faster to protect British business, as he unveils new rules for car makers when upgrading to electric vehicles. In the wake of President Trump's 25% tariffs on all automotive imports, Sir Keir Starmer has said fines for manufacturers who do not sell enough electric cars will be relaxed, and supercar firms will be exempt from the rules. The move aims to help firms transition to electric vehicles. The Prime Minister is expected to reinstate the 2030 ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars, although luxury car makers will still be allowed to keep producing petrol cars beyond that deadline. Parliamentary Under-Secretary Lillian Greenwood explained the new measures.
We want to back our British car industry, we want to protect jobs, we want to create jobs. We have the opportunity for the UK to be global leaders in the transition to electric vehicles, and that's why we're giving them this certainty now, setting out and that clarity so they know exactly what they can do between now and 2030 and now and through to 2035.
The Kremlin has said President Putin supports a ceasefire in Ukraine, but before that point can be reached, a number of questions have to be answered. The Kremlin went on to say that no one had given Russia answers to their questions about that possible ceasefire deal. On the global economy, the Kremlin said that the situation is very tense and, quote, full of negative expectations, adding that Russian economic authorities are monitoring the situation very closely, particularly in relation to oil prices. Elsewhere, healthcare workers will be sent from house to house in an NHS scheme aimed at reducing the number of people who are signed off work on sick leave. The programme will be rolled out in 25 areas across England. Health Secretary Wes Streeting said early versions of the scheme showed, quote, really encouraging signs in cutting the number of heavy users of services filling up A&E departments. And the King and Queen begin their state visit to Italy today as they're set to travel to Rome and Ravenna. A meeting between the monarchs and Pope Francis has been postponed due to the pontiff's recent ill health. But King Charles and Queen Camilla will meet with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni as the King delivers an address to a joint session of Parliament. Their Majesties will also celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary on the trip. This
is a chance for the UK government to use the King's soft power to strengthen relations between Britain and Italy. This is in the context, of course, of tariffs being imposed on both the EU and the UK by President Trump, the UK and Italy working together to combat illegal migration, and, of course, 2 NATO allies showing military strength in the face of Russian aggression in Eastern Europe. The King and Queen arriving later on today.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes past 1. Now, Donald Trump has declared the world must take his medicine, presumably bleach, as world markets continue to plummet following the US president's imposition of tariffs last week.
Britain became the latest nation to feel the pinch of Mr. Trump's import taxes. Yes, the FTSE 100 slumped to its lowest level in a year. You'd think it would be lower than the lowest level in a year, wouldn't you? Considering all the, what's going on.
Well, there have been some gains in the year, so I mean, it has been a
lowest level in a year. That's not, disaster territory, is it?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's the biggest drop that we've seen since COVID.
In a year. To its lowest now in a year. Well, anyway, global oil prices have fallen to their lowest level since 2021.
This all comes as Sir Keir Starmer prepares to announce a raft of new measures to boost British manufacturing, including relaxing rules on fines for firms that don't sell enough electric cars.
OK, well, let's cross live to Downing Street and speak to GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, the Prime Minister has quite a lot to balance here, to be fair. He's got to balance our relationship with the Trump administration. He's got to balance, obviously, public support and what people think of him, the backing of his own party. What else has he got to balance? Our economic future, the European Union, all sorts. How's he playing it currently?
Yeah, well, you make it sound so easy, right? There's a lot going on. We're going to hear from the Prime Minister at about 2:30 today. Before that, we will hear briefly from the Chancellor as well. I suppose at the moment, their top priority is making sure the Trump administration doesn't get too upset with them. At the moment, we have a 10% tariff. The EU has more than that, 20, and other countries have even greater than that. So we're going to hear from the Prime Minister today announce that he is determined to back British brilliance. This is, of course, in regards to car manufacturing. You just explained some of the changes which will be happening there. So most petrol and diesel engine vehicles will be banned from sale from 2030, which is actually a change from what Rishi Sunak introduced just before the general election. So it's moved from 2035 to 2030. However, there are some new exceptions, which is part of the new package being announced today. So most hybrids, in fact all hybrids, electric vans rather, and then, as you said, the fines going from 15,000 when any car is sold above the mandate down to 12,000. Now, the Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander said that this probably won't make any meaningful impact on the carbon emission goals of this government, which does beg the question: why didn't they just do this in the first place rather than waiting until pressure from the White House? Nonetheless, as I said, we will hear from the Prime Minister at 2:30, where he will go on to say, now more than ever, UK businesses and working people need a government that steps up, not stands aside. That means actions, not words. And what that really means is we will not impose a reciprocal tariff on the US. We're just going to adjust our domestic policies instead. So that is what we're expecting to hear later this afternoon.
Big stuff. Adam Cherry, thank you very much indeed for being in the heart of Westminster for us, speaking to all the important people. Well, the spokesperson for the Prime Minister, quite important, reasonably important.
Very important.
Although they never tell us enough, do they? Give us something concrete.
You know what else is very important?
Oh, yes, go on.
A lovely big graph.
Oh, no, not one of Tom's graphs. Go on, then. Go on, then.
Shall I? But look, this is it.
I'll let you have your moment.
OK, here we go. So this is the FTSE 100.
What's the FTSE 100, Tom?
100 most valuable firms that are listed on in London. But what we can see here is that when trading opened at 8 a.m. in the morning, look at this drop, vroom, right down. And of course, the FTSE 100 had been dropping on Friday as well. So this is, let's not forget, this isn't starting from where we were before the Trump tariffs hit. We're starting from already a lower base. That plummeted, but then some rebounding throughout the course of the morning. We recovered about half of the losses by the time the show started at about midday. But
it looks more than half.
Yeah, although it's come back down again,
Yeah,
Emily.
I suppose so, yes.
That's the problem. This is live updating now. So where we are, not quite as bad as at the start of the morning, but we've recovered maybe half. Oh, actually, it's
maybe
gone
less
down.
than half now.
Less than half now. Maybe we're about a quarter above. But the context here, is that the FTSE is down about 5%. If we look at other stock markets around the world, I mean, the Singapore Stock Exchange had its worst day for 20 years when it closed trading a couple of hours ago. Hong Kong's had a really tough time of it. The Germans about 10 points down, which is much more than the FTSE. I mean, there is so much turbulence in global markets going along. Just pointing out these live numbers here, it's not looking particularly pretty. If people thought the worst of it was over on Friday, they were very, very wrong.
Well, there you go. JD says Tom must have lost a lot on his stocks and shares, bless. They will go up, Tom, JD says. Were you hoping to buy a house or something? You're hoping for some home renovations, perhaps?
I was hoping for some home improvements, yeah.
And Simon says oil prices have dropped right down, so we should look forward to cheaper fuel and lower energy prices. I think not. Laughing emoji. Yes, will that funnel through to us, or will inflation go up? It seems that people have all different views on what's going to happen to inflation in this country. Some saying it's going to go up as a result of this. Some saying it's going to go down as a result of all this. I would say it would go up, but...
Well, I did see one piece of analysis that suggested that if it becomes really expensive to import everything to the United States, they're going to divert the imports to other countries, potentially like the United Kingdom. That could actually push inflation down a bit in the UK if we get all these goods that were going to go to the US and instead they flood our market.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there a silver lining there?
Cheaper.
Or
says,
perhaps not.
Who is truly surprised that the global money markets have reacted to the imposition of tariffs? This is exactly what has been predicted by anyone who understands poker, not chess, poker. A game of bluff and bluster, he says. Who's bluffing and who's blustering?
I think
That's what I want to know.
Blustering at the moment. I mean, what is it, 10 trillion that could have been lost by now? But
It's not really lost, though.
It is.
It'll come back. It'll come
real
back.
money.
It'll come back.
Oh, OK, let's speak to the money reporter at the Telegraph.
She should know.
Madeline Ross joins us now. Madeline, how bad is it? How bad is the situation out there right now?
Well, that is the question on everyone's minds, of course, investors, savers, pensioners, those with mortgages. And the true and honest answer is nobody knows. Nobody knows because, as you say, it is a game of poker, this. Trump could change his mind very quickly. We've seen that previously. The markets will fluctuate day to day. Nobody's saying that this is a good thing, but we don't yet know quite how bad it's going to be. A lot depends on where the US market opens in the next hour or so. But at the same time, the best thing to do for almost everyone is to wait and see, and to take a deep breath and try desperately not to panic.
Now, Madeline, in your job, you must be fielding a lot of emails from concerned readers of The Telegraph, I imagine. I'm just looking at one of your headlines here. My pension has plunged £120,000 because of Trump's tariff wars. Are you getting a lot of this through, Madeline?
Yes, we are. We're having a lot of very concerned readers, and I completely understand their concerns. There are things that I have that have also gone down quite dramatically. And my best advice is if you don't need to look at it, don't. Don't allow yourself to panic. I spoke to pensions experts for that article, Sir Steve Webb, a former pensions minister, and Tom Selby of AJ Bell, and they say diversification and patience are the answers. They're really boring answers, but for most people that is the right advice. And I love that article because, yes, he did lose 120k off the value of his pension pot, but he has 10 years or so to recover that. And he's quite optimistic that he will. So not all in all a bad story.
and yet, of course, there is an element of all of this. There's forward-looking. I mean, the reason why stock prices go up and down isn't because of what the company is doing at this moment in time. It's because of what investors expect the company to make in a slightly longer-term time frame. So this is currently the market looking at all of these firms thinking, hang on, these firms are going to make a lot less money in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years than they otherwise would have done thanks to these tariffs. And potentially a further adjustment this morning because of what Donald Trump said yesterday, that this is painful medicine that must be taken. People were thinking that perhaps this was going to be a bargaining tool, that he was using these tariffs to get rid of other tariffs that other countries were charging. But now it seems that everyone's sort of internalising the fact that Donald Trump wants these tariffs to stay.
Yeah, well, I mean, anyone making long-term plans, whether that's companies, individual savers or pensioners, needs stability and certainty as to what's going to happen. And companies are just like everyone else in that. And when you have a president who is quite as rambunctious as Trump and who is prepared to change his mind almost from day to day, it seems, on things, including tariffs, then that becomes much harder to forward plan. And therefore, profit expectations of sales are harder to predict and be harder to actually actualize and to achieve, right? So you will expect to see some revising down of targets over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and recovery might be slow. But I think you have to remain optimistic. The market has recovered from much worse.
I think so. There's always a lot of panic, isn't there, when something changes so quickly. But Madeline Ross, really appreciate your time. A money reporter at The Telegraph. Do check out her writing. It's quite interesting to see some of the stories from people who are, well, maybe panicking or maybe just looking ahead. So Flip Flop says Trump will hold firm. He saw what the markets did to Liz Truss. He'll be ready for this. Nikki says 50 countries are already wanting talks with Trump. Argentina made a deal. Israel will make a deal today. Fuss over nothing. We shall see, Nikki, if you're right about that. Yes, Rob said Tom should be careful what he says. He pointed out the FTSE 100 was recovering from its opening slump until he came on air, declining since. Yes, but it did recover from that base.
I don't think that I'm particularly... Was that trying to say that because I said something about... I'm not moving markets. I'm not sure. No, that wasn't what I was speaking.
Well, Alison just says you need to behave yourself, so I'm not sure what that means, Alison.
Well, OK, let's hope that everything gets a bit more rosy as the days and weeks progress. Let's hope that we aren't getting more, sort of falls upon falls, worst days in certain stock markets history in decades. But if you want to avoid any of this perilous financial position yourself, perhaps you want to win a big prize. Yes, it's the Great British Bizaway? Giveaway, the biggest prize.
It's the Great British Drive-Away today, actually.
Oh, yeah, there we go. The biggest prize we've ever given away. It's your chance to drive away with a brand new motorhome worth, get this, over £67,000. I think it might be significantly more than £67,000.
And you get 5k cash as well.
There's a bonus. Well, here's all the details. Have a look.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Right, it's 1:26. It's been described by a certain Piers Morgan as preposterous, hasn't it? A professional women's pool tournament has been hit by protests after the final was contested by two transgender players. So Harriet Haynes beat Lucy Smith to win the Ultimate Pool Women's Pro Series title after they both got past four female opponents on their way to the final in Wigan. Thoughts?
So?
You have no problem with two transgender women, so biological males, not only getting to the final, but both of them getting to the final and competing against each other, so there was no female contestant left in the final.
I think some people would take issue with you using the word female in that way.
OK, what's a woman then?
I think.
What's your definition of a female?
I think if you're going to go down the definitional argument, you could pick any item in this room and say, what's your definition of that? And you would find a word, you'd find a string of words.
Oh, come on, you're a sensible person. You know what the definition of a woman is. Come on.
Most women are people... I'm not going to go down a definitional...
Why not? You're acting like Keir Starmer now.
Well, no, because it's just a silly question.
No, I'm sorry. You either have a women's category or you don't. You have a women's category in pool, therefore it should only be biological females who are in that category.
When you ask,
otherwise, it's not fair on many levels.
When you ask the question, what is a woman, like, the answer that I'm supposed to give is adult human female, right?
Well, no, you're not supposed to give it. I just want to know what you think.
But that's just a tautology.
Well, not really.
Because you're just using it... then you could ask, what's a female?
So, no, do you believe that a female is someone who identifies as female rather than has the biological makeup of a female?
No, I don't think that I could just, for example, tomorrow identify as a female like that. I don't believe that. But I do believe that
But if you've had a bit of surgery, and a few hormones, then yes.
I do believe that there are transgender people who need to be treated with dignity and respect.
OK, sure, but does that mean they get to go in the women's category of pool? And win the competition?
Pool, as far as I am aware...
And you don't know anything about this. I've looked it up.
Pool is a game where you have balls on a felt surface and you hit them with a stick, right? Like that's
so
the
I've
game
actually
we're talking
read
about.
what female pool players say about this, and they say that men, biological males, have an advantage in pool because they are taller in general, they have a longer arm span, they also have less wide hips, narrower hips, which apparently is an advantage too.
Do you know how tall Harriet Haynes, who was the winner, is?
No, I don't, but I'm saying on average...
Right, but is that out of... So if there is a woman who is 6 foot tall, she should not be allowed to play pool?
You either have a female category or you don't, OK? So if you're arguing that we just have gender-neutral categories in all sports, fine.
I'm not.
But otherwise, you don't have a female category.
I'm saying that there are some sports where it's absolutely inappropriate for people who went through male
But you don't know anything about Paul or anything about sports in general, do you?
Should you ban a transgender woman from being in a pistol shooting team?
Why? We're not talking about pistol shooting.
Well, it's a sport.
If there's female category, then yes, it should only be for biological females.
Chess.
Same with that. If there's a female category.
Why do you think women are worse at chess?
I don't think women are worse at chess.
Then
if you have a female category, then you stick to it being female. If you have a male category, you stick to being male.
What do you mean by female?
If you want no categories at all in your particular sport and everyone within that sport agrees, that is fine.
So what you're doing here is you're trying to say that transgender women are male.
Biologically, they're not the same as women who are biologically female and were born female and are female.
So what you're
in a chromosomal way, in a biological way, in every other way.
Is this just sport that you'd apply it to, or do you want to apply it to every realm of life?
I'm currently talking about sport.
Yeah, but
what you won't admit is that there's any difference between a transgender female and a female. You won't admit that. Now, this isn't about bigotry. This isn't about discrimination. This isn't about saying that these transgender women can't live their lives. But they can't compete, in my view, in a female category because they are not female in the same way as a woman is female. I'm sorry.
So your argument...
I'm sorry. Why do you think there have been protests? Why do you think one of the female pool players is so furious about this?
So your argument here isn't about any innate biological advantage in the sport. It's about categorisation.
It's about that and category. I'm talking more about the category in this case.
Okay.
Because we don't know.
It's pool.
No. Also because I think it's a better argument. Because fundamentally, I think it's a strong argument and just ends the argument, really. You either have a female category or you don't. In pool, we have a female category and a male category. If you want to have a gender-neutral tournament, then go ahead.
You keep using the term female category. So, for example, we also have female loos. Do you think that transgender women should be allowed to use female loos in supermarkets?
Probably not. I think there should be gender-neutral loos.
You think that transgender women...
We're not talking about loos, though. We're talking about a competition. Female sports already don't get as much input in terms of cash, in terms of marketing often, in terms of all sorts of things. And now you have two people, born male, who are winning the tournament that females have been obviously training a lot for, and it means a lot to them. Hence why some females...
as well.
Yes, but I'm sorry. But because someone identifies as female does not mean that they are female in the same way as someone who's born as female. That's not to say that I have anything against transgender women. I don't, right?
Well, okay.
But I don't think they can compete in a female category.
You've just admitted that you don't think it's because there's an innate advantage.
No, I do think there is also. I have been told by pool players who I've read what they've had to say, and they do say that there are some male advantages in terms of, as I already explained. Anyway, let us know what you think. No, I didn't just say that. I said arm span, but we've already gone over this. I say that there should be a female and a male category. If you want to have a gender-neutral category, have one. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GBNews. Lots more coming up on today's show. Our royal correspondent has been roaming the Italian capital as the King and Queen gear up for a trip later on today. It's a beautiful scenery behind him, isn't it?
Oh, he's at the Colosseum, which is a marvellous piece of engineering, which they used to be able to fill up with water for recreated naval battles, built, of course, on top of the Colossus, the statue of Nero, which he constructed after the fire of Rome.
Well, at least you know about that. Maybe not about women in sports, but it's the headlines with Katie Bowen.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Some breaking news this lunchtime. The Home Office has announced that the first phase of the inquiry into the Southport attack will begin today. The Home Secretary has appointed retired Lord Justice of Appeal and former Judge of the International Criminal Court, Sir Adrian Fulford, as the chair of that inquiry. The first phase will establish a definitive account of the events leading up to the 2024 attack. A second, later phase will consider the wider issues of children and young people being drawn into extreme violence. Axel Rudakabana was jailed for a minimum of 52 years following the murders of 7-year-old Elsie Stankham, 6-year-old BB King and 9-year-old Alice De Silvia Aguiar. Our Home Security Editor, Mark White, will bring you more on that shortly. The FTSE 100 has hit a one-year low today, plunging by almost 6% this morning amid global market turmoil. The index is still down by around 4% as the fallout to President Trump's tariffs continue. If you're watching on television, you can see that sharp fall on the graph on your screen. Major stock indexes across the world have plunged, with the German, French and Asian markets all tumbling. Last night, US President Donald Trump said that the tariffs were, quote, medicine for investors, adding he would not do a deal with China until the US trade deficit was addressed. Downing Street has said this lunchtime that a global trade war is not in anybody's interests, adding that the UK wants to see reduced barriers to trade and also work more closely with the EU on trade, but ruled out rejoining the customs union. Sticking with the economy, the Prime Minister has said that a new era of instability has pushed the government to go further and faster to protect British businesses, as he unveils new rules for car makers when upgrading to electric vehicles. In the wake of President Trump's 25% tariff on all automotive imports, Sir Keir Starmer has said fines for manufacturers who do not sell enough electric cars will be relaxed and supercar firms will be exempt from the rules. The move aims to help firms transition to electric vehicles. The Prime Minister is expected to reinstate the 2030 ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars, although luxury car makers will still be allowed to keep producing petrol cars beyond that deadline. Parliamentary Under-Secretary Lillian Greenwood explained the new measures.
We want to back our British car industry, we want to protect jobs, we want to create jobs. We have the opportunity for the UK to be global leaders in the transition to electric vehicles, and that's why we're giving them this certainty now, setting out and that clarity so they know exactly what they can do between now and 2030 and now and through to 2035.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Let's take a proper look at those all-important markets this afternoon. The pound will buy you $1.2818 and €1.1688. The price of gold is £2,363.11 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,693 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report. Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. The M74 in South Lanarkshire is partly blocked southbound by an accident at junction 9 at Blackwood, causing delays. The A1 in West Yorkshire is partly blocked northbound. There's an accident at Barnsdale Bar with queues towards and past there. In Norfolk, the A47 is partly blocked westbound by an accident at the Pullover roundabout at Kings Lynn, with queues from the Hardwick roundabout. On the M25 in Essex, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed clockwise at junction 28 for the A12, where someone's broken down, causing roughly 3 miles of queues. And the M4 in London's partly blocked westbound by an accident between junction 2 at Brentford and Heston Services with queues on the A4 back through Chiswick.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Prince Harry. Pot, kettle. This week, Prince Harry decided to step down from Centre Barley, which was a charity formed in 2006 in memory of his late mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, to help AIDS orphans in southern Africa. Sophie Chanduka is the chair of the charity he set up and has accused him of harassment and bullying at scale. After Harry and several others quit the organisation, she claimed that the Duke of Sussex was said to have initiated the campaign by unleashing the Sussex machine. So has the bullied become the bully? Remember this?
There's a hierarchy of the family. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
There was a war against Meghan to suit other people's agendas.
It's about hatred. It's about race.
It's a dirty game.
Yet now it appears Harry has been accused of doing the very same thing that he's complaining about. Harry himself has also repeatedly used the media to berate his family in the form of that global interview with Oprah. How could we forget when he and his wife gaslit the world into believing that there was a racist in the royal family, only to later deny that that's what it was meant because he didn't actually use the word racist, instead calling it unconscious bias in an interview with Tom Bradbury years later. At no point before that did he correct the narrative with the press, if that was the case. The royal family suffered horribly, and the Queen went to her grave with this hanging over her legacy. There was a documentary where he, in my view, they insulted the UK. And, of course, how could we forget the book Spare? It came across to many as a whinge fest from someone who is incredibly privileged. Wow. And what a royal mess Prince Harry has made of absolutely everything. You know what? I am actually beginning to feel sorry for him. Oh, hold on. Am I falling into the victimhood trap?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 20 to 2. Now, a London Underground passenger has shared the moment he encountered a man openly smoking crack cocaine on the tube on his way home from work.
Oh, I'm nostalgic for a time this didn't happen. The commuter who spotted the incident and reported it to TfL staff was told there basically wasn't much they could do about him.
Well, it comes as there's a growing concern around the rising crime levels on the tube, on London's streets as well. In response to this incident, the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, said that smoking crack cocaine on the tube...
It's not funny, but it's funny.
I'm so sorry. This is a genuine statement from the Transport Secretary, just so that we're all clear. Smoking crack cocaine on the tube is unacceptable. So I'm glad we've cleared that up. Thank you, Government Minister, for letting us know.
Oh, my God. Peter Blexley is with us, former Scotland Yard detective. Peter, I've had a couple of little scary, awkward moments on the tube, but this takes the biscuit, doesn't it?
Well, it's not just the smoking of the crack that was particularly unpleasant for travellers. It was also the repeated spitting on the ground, apparently, which was equally as unpleasant, and why so many people moved away from this man. But you're not far from being alone in having unpleasant experiences on the Underground. Crime has doubled on the Underground since Sadiq Khan has been the London Mayor, and that's only the reported crime that we know about. I know many, many young women who have suffered harassment and worse on the tube, and they don't report it because when I ask them why not, they shrug their shoulders and say, well, what's the point? Many parts of the Underground service are utterly appalling. Anybody who gets the Bakerloo line regularly will know that most of its trains are daubed in vile, revolting graffiti.
Oh, it's filthy.
Yeah, it's absolutely revolting. And for Mayor of London to say that every journey matters is quite frankly an untruth, and I think they should now rewrite it to say every junkie matters.
What was the effect of crack cocaine? Is it a stimulant?
I imagine it's...
So he must have been quite erratic, his behaviour, just in general, off the back of taking such a strong drug. I mean... It is in your
early days of abusing this hugely addictive, corrosive and destructive drug, but in a very short space of time, it gets such a grip over you that it becomes the very centre of a junkie's life. All they can focus on is where they're going to get the next crack rock from in order to smoke it. It's a revolting drug, and of course cuts to the bigger question about our drug laws, because the war on drugs cannot and will not ever be won. But in terms of our transport system, it falls way, way short of what passengers should expect, and of course tourists, because any tourist that experiences something like this or has the huge misfortune to go on the Bakerloo line will probably never come to London again.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong.
Isn't this the point, though? I mean, this man was smoking it openly, knowing that nothing would happen, knowing that the police are utterly overwhelmed and that frankly, he had impunity, as we see with so much crime that goes on at the moment. Frankly, what on earth can actually be done about this, Peter? I was on the Underground just a couple of weeks ago when a similarly, I don't know if he was on drugs or just very mentally disturbed, but a man was storming down the side of the platform, just shouting, you know, just being incredibly loud, swinging his arms about. People were sort of stepping back, hugging the wall, because you didn't know if he was going to strike out at anyone. And this happens more and more, it seems. I mean, what on earth can be done?
Well, our police services could stop being social services and actually deal with policing, the kind of policing that the public actually want, or certainly the public that tell me the kind of policing that they want, which is officers to patrol the streets, the tube, the stations, the parks and everywhere in order to prevent crime, detect crime and arrest people when they come across people breaking the law. But BTP, British Transport Police, is one of our more lamentable police services. In fact, only a couple of weeks ago, they imposed a no alcohol order on all trains taking Newcastle fans home after they'd won at Wembley. When Newcastle won their first trophy in 70 years, first domestic trophy, they stopped their supporters from having a celebratory drink as they travelled on the trains all the way back to the northeast. And here you see the disconnect that these police services have from the public. They're not of us anymore. They're not like us anymore. They don't appreciate us anymore. They look upon us as the great unwashed, and consequently, on one hand, they act like the 1970s East German Stasi, and on the other hand, they are absent, nowhere to be seen.
OK, well, Peter Blexley, strong stuff as ever. I do hope we get to a time where there aren't random men smoking crack cocaine on the tube. We await that time. Thank you very much. In response to all of this, a TfL spokesperson has said we want all customers to feel safe when travelling, and we understand the alarm this kind of behaviour could cause. We are working with the police, specialist teams and other agencies to help more vulnerable people away from our network and into help and support. It's interesting, isn't it? Because, yes, this man is obviously in an awful state. And what would the police do with him? You know, they take him, they bang him up for a few days, then he's out again, then he's banged up again. We don't have facilities to just hold people, you know, away from everyone else.
No.
A ban on Transport for London, he'll just go somewhere else, won't he?
But also, how do you enforce a ban on Transport for London? I mean, it's incredibly difficult to do, but clearly the root problem there is addiction. Yeah, the only thing that can do us is apparently the New York subway's worse. So there you go. Although I have to say the Bakerloo line is becoming more and more like the New York subway week by week. But if you want to get away from the New York subway or indeed the London Underground, perhaps you'd like to try the Madrid Metro or maybe even the Vienna Under. I think it begins with a U. I'm not sure, but here are the holiday forecast destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, if you are off on your Easter break, it is colder in the southeast Mediterranean at the moment. Having a look at the detail, we've got some colder air coming down from the Arctic, so actually much below average for the time of year. Across parts of Italy, there is some sunshine, especially then more so across France, parts of Spain and Portugal. But towards the far west, we will see outbreaks of rain and some showers. And then as we go through the week, many places will see some sunshine before it turns a little bit downhill later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office on this sunny Monday. Barely any cloud around for most of us today, and in the sunshine it is going to feel pretty warm indeed. Currently, high pressure is firmly in control. It has been for a little while and is going to continue to dominate our weather as we go through much of this week. As a result, it is going to be largely sunny. A bit of cloud pushing into some North Sea coastal areas perhaps, and also around Orkney and Shetland. Otherwise, barely barely any cloud around, lots of blue skies. Just worth bearing in mind, UV levels will be moderate. Temperatures are going to be, well, on the warm side, peaking around 17 or 18 Celsius towards some western parts, most places getting into the mid-teens. And the breeze that was a little bit nagging for some places over the weekend, that's generally dropped out, though a bit of a breeze towards some eastern and southern coastal parts. Staying fine as we go through towards the end of the day, still though a bit more cloud through this evening for Orkney and Shetland, otherwise barely any cloud around, so it is going to be a fine evening and also a fine start to the night across, well, much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales. As we go through the night with clear skies and relatively light winds, yes, it is going to turn a little bit chilly, and with that we could see a few pockets of mist and fog developing, a bit of fog perhaps pushing into some North Sea coastal parts around the Humber maybe, and a few patches elsewhere, but on the whole it is going to be a fine night, if not a little bit chilly. Temperatures in some places just about dipping below freezing, so a touch of frost in some prone spots. Otherwise then, as we go through tomorrow, and any mist and fog will clear, burn away as we go through the morning, though across some eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, perhaps some of the fog could linger for a little while longer here. Otherwise, yes, again, another largely fine day. Perhaps a bit more high-level cloud around, so the sunshine a little bit hazier, but again, temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens Celsius.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:51, and yes, there's a huge boost for passengers to bring you today. Travellers flying from Gatwick Airport will no longer need to remove electrical items or put their liquids in those dreaded plastic bags.
Oh, joy of joys. I swear we do this headline once every bloomin' year.
They're clocking on, aren't they?
They keep delaying it and putting it back, but this is finally the truth, or at least so we hope. Passengers can now leave liquids and laptops in their hand luggage while going through security.
You know what? I do hate getting it all out. This comes as part of its plan to transform its security screening process. However, don't get too excited because liquids still have to be under 100 ml. You've got a dirty mind.
No,
Joining us now is travel commentator Hayley Sparks. Hayley, thank you very much. This will actually improve the experience of travellers, won't it, Hayley?
It will, and it's been a really long time coming, and in my mind they haven't gone far enough, but we will take this small win because it is a massive faff having to get the plastic bag and everything out, isn't it? The laptops out if you're travelling with families, you've got young children. It just creates delays and hold-ups, and it adds to the stress of travelling. So now knowing that you can keep your liquids in your hand luggage, yes, they are still the smaller size, but you don't have to, worry about scurrying around in your bag, getting them all out. I think it will be a relief to passengers. Not having to get the laptops and the iPads and all of our electricals out and then packing them away. So I'm really hoping that this is the way forward and it will speed up the process. But it's the introduction of these new high-tech 3D scanners that have been installed that allow more detailed images of luggage to be seen. But please be warned that these are introduced at major airports in the UK, and some of the smaller airports don't have access to this technology, so I wouldn't want anyone to get caught out.
I've accidentally been caught in On a couple of occasions.
What do you mean?
By which I mean I was ready to get my laptop and my toiletries out of my bag, and they said, no, leave it in. That's happened to me. I was put in an experimental line at Gatwick and at Heathrow just recently. It was the same thing. So it does seem that maybe Luton will be the airport that has this sort of all across the board, but other airports are sort of doing it... Gatwick. But other airports are doing it bit by bit.
They are, yes. Major UK airports have slowly introducing these scanners, so we should be seeing that it's more mainstream across the UK. But because some of the smaller airports haven't invested in the technology, you can get caught out. So unfortunately for travellers, I would say my best advice is do always check that the airport you're flying from, what their specific rules are, because you don't want to kind of have that stress when you're going through security. But if you are travelling from Gatwick, rest assured that you do not have to worry.
Yeah, I mean, it is awful, isn't it, when your bag goes down the bit and then they open it up and you've got all your private belongings. Hayley Sparks, thank you very much
what
indeed.
Are you travelling
Thank you. Well, you know, a spare pair of knickers, maybe some female hygiene products that you don't want some random bloke to look through.
No, but we're going to be building up to that net zero announcement from the Prime Minister. Stay with us after this short break.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. More sunshine to come as we go through the next few days. Worth bearing in mind though, our nights will be a little bit chilly, and with that we could see a few pockets of mist and fog. But the reason why it's mostly fine at the moment, well, high pressure. It's not going anywhere for the time being, so it's going to continue to dominate our weather, bringing the settled conditions and the largely sunny skies. The sunny skies then leads to a clear night for most of us, but a cloud around Orkney and Shetland, and worth bearing in mind there'll be some low clouds, some mist, some fog developing around the Humber as well, and a few pockets of mist and fog could develop elsewhere, but most of us having a dry, clear night. With that then, temperatures taking a bit of a dip, so a chilly start to tomorrow morning. There could be a touch of frost in some prone spots. As we go through the day though, most of any mist and fog patches will gradually clear away as we go through the morning. There may be a zone of something a little bit cloudier around the London area for a time, but otherwise lots of sunshine on offer. Some eastern parts of Scotland, maybe into northeast England and around the Humber here, any mist and fog could take a little while to clear as we go through the day, but otherwise it is going to be a fine picture and plenty of sunshine. Yet again, away from perhaps the far north of Scotland, still a bit of nagging cloud around, similar to today really. Otherwise, as we go through the day, yes, lots of sunshine on offer, a bit more high-level cloud than we'll have seen through today, and so the sunshine may be a bit hazy at times, but nonetheless plenty of blue skies on offer, and with that it is going to feel pretty warm indeed. Temperatures similar, maybe even a touch higher than today, so highs of around 18 or 19 Celsius, pretty warm indeed. Staying fine as we go through the end of tomorrow as well. More fine weather through the evening and overnight. Again, a few pockets of mist and fog perhaps as we go overnight into Wednesday. But high pressure is going to stick around for a little while yet, so it is staying generally dry and often sunny as we go through the rest of the week. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis. Watching on demand.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 7th of April. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, the FTSE 100 tanks to its lowest level in a year, a drop as precipitous as many others around the world. Some stock markets dropping their lowest level, biggest drops in 20 years. But the UK is the latest country to take Donald Trump's medicine. It comes amid global shockwaves following that tariff announcement. We've got the latest reaction, including at 2:30. Yes, that crucial time when the New York Stock Exchange dings open. Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. Also happening at 2:30, there's a little conflict here actually, but we'll manage it, don't worry. Keir Starmer's also going to announce a relaxation of the old net zero rules around the sale of electric vehicles. Yes, he's gearing up to announce bold changes. Just how bold will these changes be? We'll bring you the announcement live.
And an Islamic leader warns the Middle East conflict is fueling extremism here in Britain. Continues to be exacerbating issues of division and integration, turning into a national security issue. Do you agree?
What's more exciting then, Tom? Keir Starmer's speech at 2:30 or the stock exchange opening at 2:30 in New York?
I think when we come to look back at this period in history, perhaps in 5 or 10 years' time, more people will remember the dings of the stock exchange than Keir Starmer's speech.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so too. Just simply because, well, not simply because, but one of the reasons is that Keir Starmer's speech may not be as bold as has been suggested, unfortunately, although we hold out hope.
We do hold out hope, but it does seem that, it's a reduction in the fines that manufacturers are placed on if they don't meet a certain target of electric vehicles, down from 15,000 to 12,000, something like that.
Yep.
And potentially allowing hybrid vehicles to be sold for another 5 years, whereas previously they thought they were going to be banned in 2030. I mean, is this rearranging deck chairs
You can get hybrid
on the deck of the Titanic?
Hybrids as well, whether you have to plug in or not. So
Ah.
even the ones you don't have to plug in, you can now have new till 2035.
How benevolent.
So there you go.
How generous. Manna from heaven.
Do you know
Surely we live under such a benevolent government.
Oh, maybe I'm a radical here, but I think people should be able to buy whatever car they like.
Whoa.
In a free country.
Be careful now. You'll have Ofcom on your back.
Quite possibly. I mean, what do you make of it all? Apparently there's going to be an industrial strategy, but we don't quite have that yet.
No.
Do we? Apparently globalisation is dead, but we're not exactly sure what that means. Apparently we're going to make all these free market reforms in this country, but then we're going to be subsidising industries that have a tough time because of Trump. It doesn't all really make sense cohesively as it stands.
It doesn't add up. It really, really doesn't. I mean, if Keir Starmer wants to have all of these wonderful trade deals, wants to do this great trade deal with Donald Trump, wants to deregulate here at home. How is that anti-globalisation? I mean, surely that's the very definition of globalisation.
Well, I mean, Tom, this is all immaterial, really, isn't it? Because Keir Starmer hasn't managed to phone Donald Trump for a few days, for quite a while, actually.
No,
so
as we learned.
a phone call would be nice, I think. gbnews.com/your...
You never text, you never phone.
You never write me.
And they had such great physical contact in the Oval Office.
They did, all the
touching
cuddling.
each other so very much.
Yeah.
In more ways than one. Well, we'll get to all of that after your latest news headlines with Katie Bowen.
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. It's 4 minutes past 2. These are latest headlines from the GB newsroom. The Home Office has announced that the first phase of the inquiry into the Southport attack will begin today. The Home Secretary has appointed retired Lord Justice of Appeal and former judge of the International Criminal Court, Sir Adrian Fulford, as the chair of that inquiry. The first phase will establish a definitive account of the events leading up to the 2024 attack, and a second, later phase will consider the wider issues of children and young people being drawn into extreme violence. Axel Rudikabana was jailed for a minimum of 52 years following the murders of 7-year-old Elsie Dot Stankham, 6-year-old BB King and 9-year-old Alice Da Silva Aguiar. Our Home and Security editor Mark White will bring you more on that shortly. The FTSE 100 has hit a new one-year low today, plunging by almost 6% this morning amid global market turmoil. The index is still down by around 4% as the fallout of President Trump's tariffs continue. If you're watching on television, you can see that sharp fall on your screen. Major stock indexes across the world have plunged, with the German, French and Asian markets all tumbling. The New York Stock Exchange is due to open shortly. Last night, US President Donald Trump said that tariffs were, quote, medicine for investors, adding he would not do a deal with China until the US trade deficit was addressed. Downing Street has said this lunchtime that a global trade war is not in anybody's interests, adding that the UK wants to see reduced barriers to trade and also work more closely with the EU, but ruled out rejoining the customs union. Sticking with the economy, the Prime Minister has said that a new era of instability has pushed the government to go further and faster to protect British business, as he unveils new rules for car makers when upgrading to electric vehicles. In the wake of President Trump's 25% tariffs on all automotive imports, Sir Keir Starmer has said fines for manufacturers who do not sell enough electric cars will be relaxed and supercar firms will be exempt from the rules. The move aims to help firms transition to electric vehicles. The Prime Minister is expected to reinstate the 2030 ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars, although luxury car makers will still be allowed to keep producing petrol cars beyond that deadline. Parliamentary Under-Secretary Lillian Greenwood explained the new measures.
We want to back our British car industry, we want to protect jobs, we want to create jobs. We have the opportunity for the UK to be global leaders in the transition to electric vehicles, and that's why we're giving them this certainty now, setting out and that clarity so they know exactly what they can do between now and 2030 and now and through to 2035.
The Kremlin has said President Putin supports a ceasefire in Ukraine, but before that point can be reached, a number of questions have to be answered. The Kremlin went on to say that no one had given Russia answers to their questions about that possible ceasefire deal. On the global economy, the Kremlin said that the situation is very tense and, quote, full of negative expectations, adding that Russian economic authorities are monitoring the situation very closely, particularly in relation to oil prices. Elsewhere, firefighters have tackled almost 150 wildfires in Northern Ireland across 3 days. A major incident was declared as firefighters tried to contain the fire in the Hilltown area near the Mourne Mountains in County Down. Authorities said a significant majority of the fires were started deliberately. A 25-year-old man arrested on suspicion of arson in connection with those fires was later released on bail. And the King and Queen begin their state visit to Italy today, as they're set to travel to Rome and Ravenna. A meeting between the monarchs and Pope Francis has been postponed due to the pontiff's recent ill health, but King Charles and Queen Camilla will meet with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni as the King delivers an address to a joint session of Parliament. Their Majesties will celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary on the trip. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker is in Rome.
This is a chance for the UK government to use the King's soft power to strengthen relations between Britain and Italy. This is in the context, of course, of tariffs being imposed on both the EU and the UK by President Trump, the UK and Italy working together to combat illegal migration, and, of course, 2 NATO allies showing military strength in the face of Russian aggression in Eastern Europe. The King and Queen arriving later on today.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 2. Now let's return to that breaking news from the last hour, that the Home Secretary has announced the Southport inquiry has begun today. Yvette Cooper has appointed Sir Adrian Fulford as the inquiry's chair.
Well, GB News Home Security Editor Mark White joins us with the latest. Mark, tell us a little bit about what this is actually going to cover and what it might be missing out.
Well, the inquiry, the first part is going to be in 2 phases. The first part is going to look at the incident leading, or the time span leading up to the attacks itself, the background of Axel Rudikabana, the murderer, the lessons that can be learned in terms of the mistakes that were made, and we know mistakes were made in terms of the various authorities who handled this young man's descent towards violent extremism. He had shown signs of being very disturbed and violent quite a number of years before he carried out the attacks last summer. But he had been, despite being referred to the Prevent Counter-Extremism programme on 3 separate occasions, nothing meaningful was done to divert him away from this path of violent extremism. So those issues will be examined primarily in this first phase. And then there will be a second phase, which is looking more broadly at the issues of young people being increasingly attracted to violent extremism, and whether they're being influenced by the likes of the material that they can download quite easily on the internet. What the inquiry will not look at, it seems, is the aftermath of the attack in Southport that descended into violence in Southport and then, of course, spread to multiple other locations in England and even in Northern Ireland. It's not going to look at that, which I think some people will be probably disappointed about, because there are definitely questions that need to be answered on that, not least of them the admission by the Prime Minister that he was aware that Axel Rudikabana had terrorist literature in his house, had been planning and actively involved in constructing a biological weapon, but that information was not made public, despite the feeling amongst many within the community that they weren't being told the full facts at the time.
And of course, this wouldn't have been prejudicial to mention, because we did learn it before the trial was due to begin, but just not during that period of heightened tension in the country. Presumably a political decision.
Yeah, I mean, it seems a little bit schizophrenic, the sort of messaging around this, in terms of we were told quite extensively that the reason they did not tell us about this was because they didn't want to do anything to prejudice the trial. But you're absolutely right. A couple of months before the trial, they told us that 2 new charges were being added to the indictment, a terrorism charge and a chemical weapons charge, or biological weapons charge. And that obviously did not in any way prejudice the smooth running of that trial. So regardless of that, it's not going to be included in this public inquiry at this stage anyway. Let's see how it develops, because the judge can lead it in a direction that he feels to be appropriate. And this judge is very experienced, a former appeal court judge. He was the judge that sentenced Wayne Couzens, the murderer of Sarah Everard, to a whole life tariff. He was also the judge that led the coronial inquiry into the murders of 3 men in Reading back in 2020 in what was effectively a terrorist attack by a man called Kari Saldala at that time as well. So very experienced former Court of Appeal judge.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we had Jonathan Hall KC on, who was the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, and he said that Starmer's secrecy over Southport could have put the trial at risk. I do wonder if a lot of people listening and watching us today will be wondering whether there should be a proper inquiry into why that information was withheld from the public, because, you know, a lot of people have linked it to the outburst of violence that we all saw during the summer that perhaps could have been avoided.
Yeah, well, I mean, there hasn't been, and, you know, I was surprised when Sir Keir Starmer stood up and admitted in a news conference that he was aware of those facts, but then argued that away by saying it was all in an effort to ensure that there was proper and smooth justice and nothing to prejudice that upcoming trial, that actually more people didn't pick him up on that, but, you know, they didn't.
But I suppose there's also the argument on the other hand that these sorts of inquiries are incredibly expensive. We don't have a clear time frame on when we're going to get results. This could drag on for a long, long time, and adding yet more different avenues of exploration. I mean, it will add more costs, more lawyers, more time taken up, and perhaps more time before the families of the victims actually get their answers.
Well, we're told that they are expecting a final draft of the report to go to the Home Secretary by either the end of this year or early next year. That's phase one. So they expect that to be concluded by then. But you're absolutely right in terms of the way that they can drag on, that they are very, very expensive. And one of the biggest issues of all that many people have with these inquiries is they make recommendations that never ever seem to be implemented, as we find ourselves in another situation where something horrific has happened and people then question why the recommendations that were laid down by some other body previously had not been acted on.
Yeah. Are they worthwhile? I do wonder. I mean, the COVID inquiry is taking rather a while, isn't it? Anyway, thank you very much, Mark White, our Home Security Editor. Well, yes, the big news there. Donald Trump has declared the world must take his medicine as the markets continue to plummet following the imposition of tariffs.
Yes, Britain became the latest nation to feel the pinch of Mr Trump's import taxes as the FTSE 100 slumped to its lowest level in a year. That drop has really been quite precipitous, not just today, but of course over the days before the weekend as well. Meanwhile, global oil prices have fallen to the lowest level since 2021.
Well, it all comes as Keir Starmer prepares to announce a raft of new measures, supposedly to boost British manufacturing, and that's happening in the next 10 minutes or so. So you're going to want to, continue watching, because he might be making quite a big announcement relating to net zero, in particular vehicles, and what you are and aren't allowed to buy in this country.
Shall we get all the latest with our very own reporter live on Downing Street? Adam Cherry is there for us. Adam, what are we expecting the Prime Minister to say?
Well, we're going to hear from the Chancellor first. She'll make a few remarks, although she's not speaking to the media afterwards, we understand. Then the Prime Minister will make the main announcements, which we've been discussing on the channel throughout the day. So it's tweaks to the to electric vehicle policy. So, the hybrid ban from 2030 is being tweaked. It's now being pushed to 2035. The ban, or rather the fine for any non-electric vehicle sold beyond the mandate, goes from 15,000 down to 12,000, and there are a few small other manufacturers which will get, it will be exempt from all of this because they sell under, I think, 2,500 non-electric vehicles a year. So that's really your supercars. That's your Bentleys, your Aston Martins. They're going to be exempt entirely. Now, Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, said earlier today that these are tweaks. They're not necessarily huge changes, and they might not sound massive to viewers listening from home, and that's because they're not really. They're not going to make a huge difference to the economic outlook following these tariffs being imposed over the weekend. In terms of any progress on that, any sort of free trade agreement or what's being known as the prosperity deal with the US, doesn't look like we're making any huge amounts of progress. I'm sure the Prime Minister will be asked about this at some point today. But Jonathan Reynolds, the Business Secretary, he's been in Washington over the last few weeks trying to get this deal over the line. It hasn't happened yet. Doesn't look like it's going to happen in the next few days at least anyway. So that is not on the cards today. As I said, we'll hear from the Chancellor first in about 10 minutes. After that, Prime Minister will stand up and there will be a press conference with the media after that.
Adam Cherry, thank you very much indeed. Our reporter there outside Downing Street. Thank you very much indeed. Do you see another thing that's been delayed?
What's that?
Keir Starmer's promised white paper on how to cut immigration.
Interesting.
On the back burner. Not going to come till way after Easter now, apparently.
Well, maybe that's because he's working out all of the details and it'd be an absolutely fantastic piece of work. What do you think?
What was that word he likes to use? Or people like to use about Keir Starmer?
Forensic.
Forensic. Yes, it has to be forensic.
Absolutely. Well, we should say that, of course, the FTSE has been dropping. We've been looking at the state of it throughout the programme today. But let's have a look at where we are with the FTSE. Because,
go on,
because we did, at 8 o'clock this morning, see this pretty precipitous fall. This was a very concerning time for those top most 100 valuable countries listed in London. However, it must be said throughout the course of the day there has been a bit of a recovery, a bit of a drop again, but we're bouncing around here. It's not as low as we first thought at 8 in the morning, but London has not been the biggest hit of all of the stock markets today. No, over in Asia, many of those markets were not open on Friday due to public holidays. So, for example, we look at the Hang Seng market over in Hong Kong. That's down 13%, its biggest drop since 1997. There are so many other markets. Singapore, also its biggest drop in almost 20 years. There have been some bigger drops over in Asia than in Europe because Europe was trading on Friday. But the FTSE down, where are we, around 7,750 points. That's better off than right early in the morning, which was likely due to some automatic trading. But clearly, we're still not in a good place. We're still net down, just not as far down as some other parts of the world. Germany's been particularly badly hit, but of course it's the Asian markets that have been taking massive whacks as well. And in 10 minutes' time, we will find out what the New York Stock Exchange is doing, and that's what's going to draw perhaps the most attention of all.
Yes, and the theatrics of it as well make for good television. You could, find yourself on Bloomberg with that presentation.
Michael, if you're watching.
These are my skills.
Michael Bloomberg, when he ran to be the Republican nominee for president...
He's a very rich man, isn't he?
Interns were given just sort of top-of-the-range MacBook. I mean, the amount that was spent on that campaign and the number of staff that were hired on stupidly high salaries, given all of these benefits, the campaign ran for about 6 weeks, and they got to leave with all of their tech. I mean, it was the most incredible campaign by the amount of money spent to the lowest number of votes got. I mean, the ratios were completely off the scale. It does show that, actually, in politics, in the last few presidential cycles, spending the most money doesn't necessarily mean you're the biggest winner. Harris spent more than Trump.
True, quite a lot more.
Clinton spent more than Trump. Bloomberg spent more than anyone else in that Republican primary. I mean, it doesn't always match that the highest spender wins the most votes.
Yeah, sometimes there just is a more popular candidate. Regardless of the funds, but this always makes me think, this graph and the FTSE and all of these dips, and it makes me think, how can I make some money out of this? How can I make some money? If I was brighter, or perhaps more brighter in this area, then you could probably make millions, couldn't you?
Well, you probably could. I'm not about to give any investment advice, but I did see that if you'd have bought Newsmax stock when they had their IPO at the end of last week, and the gains were just absolutely huge. I mean, people that bought in early then will have made by the end of the day, you know, like 10 times their money. Just absolutely crazy stuff.
But if your pension has dropped massively, apparently you shouldn't worry too much because, well, unless you want to take it out tomorrow, because it should recover. But time for the Great British Giveaway. Yes, if your pension can't recover, at least you have a nice motorhome. It's the biggest prize we've ever given away. It's a chance to drive away with a brand new motorhome worth over £67,000, and we throw in £5,000 in cash. So that's rather nice. Here's the details.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Because we've got this Snow White premiere. What's going on with it? I've been hearing about this Snow White film for about 2 years, and it doesn't seem to be good news in the headlines.
No. I mean, it's quite unusual for a kids' film to get so much controversy, but it has been sort of dogged by sort of bad headlines and bad press for quite a long time. And then in the sort of immediate run-up to its release, it looks as though they've sort of scaled back a lot of the promotion to sort of avoid more controversy, but that in itself is creating headlines. I mean,
We're seeing some of the trailer now for anyone watching it on TV. We've seen some of that. I must say, when I watched the trailer, I wasn't particularly impressed by it.
Well, I mean, some of the Disney live actions have been brilliant and some of them have been less good. I mean, I sort of think any press is good press. I mean, more people are aware that the film's coming out now than would have been if we hadn't had all this bad press. And I suspect that, I mean, people who are going to go are people taking their kids. And the kids aren't bothered about what one of the actresses has said or whether the dwarves are real or CGI. Like, I think it'll probably do very well. I think it depends whether it's any good, really. I think that's the most important thing. I think the negative sort of press and controversy around it probably isn't going to have a massive factor in the takings.
What does scaled back mean in terms of the premiere? What does that actually, how will that look?
So a lot of films will have a big premiere in Leicester Square. That's the sort of like, I guess in Europe, the sort of HQ for premieres, and you get a lot of, you know, the world will jet in to cover that. Whereas this has had a sort of quite a small scale premiere in northern Spain in a castle. So it kind of looked quite grand, but it was on a very small scale. So and there haven't been as many interviews and things like that with the cast, I think, because of everything that's happening. So it has been scaled back a bit. But I mean, like, we're talking about it now, so it's working, whatever they are doing.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain, and good morning, America. Yes, we're going to go straight to New York now to look at the New York Stock Exchange. We're just minutes from the stock exchange opening after what has been a torrid morning for other markets around the world. Some reports suggest that we've seen the worst day of trading in places like Singapore and Hong Kong, which have just about closed out their markets for the day. The worst days since the 1990s in terms of stock sell-offs.
Yeah, but Donald Trump is saying this is the medicine and it's all going to be okay. He doesn't want anything to fall, but this is what needs to happen. That's his narrative to the American people. Don't worry. It's all going to be fine.
You might not want it to fall, but I'm looking at a flashing screen here. This is, of course, what happened on Thursday and Friday. About 9.5% wiped off the US stock market there. Nvidia, one of the biggest chip manufacturers, down 14%. Apple, down 14%. Microsoft, down 5%. Google, down 6%. Meta, the owners of Facebook and Instagram, down 12.5%. Amazon, down 11%. Tesla, down 10%. I mean, all of these are huge numbers.
Anyone
else? These, I don't know what healthcare. United National Healthcare was up by 1%.
Interesting. I wonder why.
But basically everything else down. And this is the real point. These are huge firms with market caps that are bigger than most countries.
Sure.
So if they lose 10% of their value, or like Apple lose 14% of their value, we are talking tens of billions of dollars. Across the board, we're looking at trillions of dollars that have been lost. And now it is just less than a minute before the market reopens for trading. Will there be any recovery? Or how much lower could it all fall?
Yeah, and what will the impact be on our stock market, on our economy, on Keir Starmer's agenda here in the United Kingdom? Here we're waiting, as you can see, in New York City for that stock exchange to open there. It usually opens, well, it always opens with a ding, 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 doesn't it, Tom?
It certainly does, and that is the theatre, the drama that has rather been stripped from our more sanitised London Stock Exchange. But in New York, of course, we were awaiting that dinging. We are awaiting the opening of trading. People are beginning to clap. Let's listen in for the dings and see exactly where things are going to fall. Trading has now opened in New York. It's worth reminding that trading was halted in Tokyo earlier today after the falls were too low. The Taiwanese Stock Exchange closed 10 points down, but of course, wow, opening up 3 points down. Remember, this is on top of the falls that we saw on Thursday and Friday. It amounted to 9.5% down accumulatively for the Dow Jones. That's what we're looking at now on the New York Stock Exchange. Down 3 points, 3%, I should say, down 1,000 points. Goodness me, 1,100 points.
It's the third day of big losses, isn't it? It's the third day of big losses, huge amounts of uncertainty. The market's trying to decide what exactly is going to happen with it when it comes to these tariffs and what it means for the US economy and the state of these big businesses that are worth so much. But yes, a huge amount off the stock market, the third day of consecutive losses. There'll be a lot of worry in that room.
Now, remember, it was a big thing when it dropped below 40,000 points.
Right, the Chancellor has actually just started. Our Chancellor has just started speaking in the West Midlands. Let's just pop over to her.
Jaguar Land Rover, you don't need me to tell you, is an iconic British brand and company. It's got a proud history, and there are huge opportunities despite the challenges that we face for the future. When it comes to high-quality design and engineering, you, all of you, are gold standard. The skill, the expertise that Keira and I have seen here today demonstrate why that is, and why every year you produce hundreds and thousands of cars for export right across the globe, from Europe to China to India, and of course to the United States of America. Your success, and those of companies like you, is integral to the success of our whole British economy. But as I set out in the spring statement less than 2 weeks ago, the world is changing. We can see that before our eyes. The global economy has become more uncertain, and new tariff barriers are impacting global trade. Businesses like your own and workers, including those that I have met here today, are understandably concerned about what the measures announced by President Trump mean in practice. Because while the UK is in a stronger position compared to many others, sectoral tariffs and the interconnected nature of the global economy means that we will still feel the overall effects of tariffs elsewhere, and particularly in the auto sector. But I want all of you to know that this government, this Prime Minister, and with me as Chancellor, we have your back. The choice that we now have is how to respond to that changed world. We could step back and rely on old assumptions about how the world works. Or we can step up together and accept that the global landscape has changed, and so we must change with it. The approach that we are taking is cool-headed, it is pragmatic, and it is guided by the national interest, seeking to strike deals with our trading partners around the world, including with the United States. And we will continue to make the case for free, fair, and open trade, because that is how we will continue to deliver prosperity and security for working people here at Jaguar Land Rover and right across our country. And we must do more. We will, as a government, as a country, go further and faster to capitalise on new opportunities in this changing world, to improve our domestic competitiveness so that we are less exposed to global shocks, and to secure Britain's future for the long term. That means doubling down on economic stability, the basic condition to secure economic growth. It is why this government has stuck to its fiscal rules in the spring statement, even when they were tested, demonstrating that when Britain talks about economic stability, we really mean it. And stability matters even more for working people and for business in an uncertain world. In the coming months, we will publish a modern industrial strategy to tackle growth in 8 key sectors, including in advanced manufacturing. A new plan for maximising growth in all of our regions, including here in the West Midlands. And a multi-year spending review to deliver the long-term sustainable investment that we need to grow as an economy. In this new era, we will continue to provide support where it is needed, including in sectors most exposed to trade shocks. Sectors like car manufacturing, the UK's #1 goods export, which generates £93 billion globally in revenue. It employs over 150,000 people in high-value, high-skilled jobs like those here at Jaguar Land Rover. And we've announced billions of investment over the last 2 years in the development of electric vehicles. We want to provide clarity and certainty for manufacturers like JLR as you make these investments, which is why today we are reinstating the 2030 phase-out date for new petrol and diesel car sales, just as we promised in the election. This is fundamental for achieving our plans for energy security and, crucially, for incentivising investment in Britain. But we must do more to meet the moment and ensure that jobs and investment remain in Britain. We are already providing £2.3 billion to support zero-emission vehicle manufacturing and improving charging infrastructure, on top of the tax breaks that are worth hundreds of millions of pounds each year to help switch to electric vehicles and support British manufacturing. And today we are going further with new measures to support car manufacturers decarbonise in a way that is sustainable and good for jobs in Britain. I am pleased that companies like JLR have given their backing to our plan, which is about stepping up into the new challenges that we face and the new economic reality. Government, business, trade unions working in partnership, building resilience at home by safeguarding jobs and investment here in Britain, capitalising on new opportunities in the global economy, and delivering security and delivering prosperity for working people across our country. That is the prize that is on offer that we must achieve together in our national interest. And to say more about how we will seize that prize, I'm delighted to introduce the Prime Minister. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Adrian. And can I just say a big thank you to the entire workforce here. Some of you are here with us this afternoon, and I just want to say thank you for showing us what you do. We've been able to see some of the skill and experience that you put into this incredible product, years and years in the making in the technology. But thank you also for making us proud to be British, because as each car rolls off here, that is rolling off your production line, that is your commitment, that is your toil, your work, your professionalism, but it is then a product which you should be rightly proud of, and we're really proud of as a country, and none of that is easy. So thank you to each and every one of you. I'm trying to catch some faces, including those behind me, because I know just how much you put into that, and I want you to know just how much we appreciate what you do and how proud we are of what you do. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining us here this afternoon. Jaguar Land Rover, our leading exporter of goods, employing thousands of people across the West Midlands and beyond, including here, that proud symbol of British engineering brilliance. And brilliance is the right word. When you look at what is rolling off here, that is engineering brilliance. It is our industrial heritage, but also, in my strongly held view, it is our industrial future, not just our heritage. My message to you, Rachel, and my message to you today is simple. These are challenging times, but we have chosen to come here because we are going to back you to the hilt. And I think it's really significant that after the announcement on Wednesday, we had Adrian with us at 7 o'clock the next morning, and here we are Monday with you. Please read into that a statement of intent, because it is a statement of intent about how important this is for you, for us, and for the country. As Rachel has said, there's no doubt the challenge, but this is a moment for cool heads. Nobody wins from a trade war. You know that. But it's also a moment for urgency, because we've got to rise together as a nation to the great challenge of our age, and it is the great challenge, which is to renew Britain so that we're secure in this era of global instability. And nobody is pretending that tariffs are good news. You know that better than anyone. 25% tariffs on automotive exports and 10% on other goods. That is a huge challenge for our future, and the global economic consequences could be profound. But this moment has also made something very clear, that this is not a passing phase, and just as we've seen with our national security and defence, particularly over recent months in relation to the war in Ukraine, now with our commerce and trade, this is a changing and completely new world, an era where old assumptions, which we've long taken for granted, simply don't apply any longer. Now, before the election, I called it an age of insecurity. And that is the right phrase, insecurity, because I know that that's how it's felt in the lives of working people, insecurity, a care, a worry for builders, for carers, for nurses, factory workers like people here, working harder and harder for the pound in their pocket, yet watching this rising tide of insecurity threaten to sweep away the things that we cherish in our communities. Trust me, I know people will be feeling like that right now. But to those people I say, we have your back. This government will not just sit back and hope. That is how politics has failed you in recent years, sort of attempting to manage crises without fundamental change just leads to managed decline. So no, we're going to seize the possibilities, fight for the future, on defence spending, on AI, clean British energy, and on manufacturing, including car building. Make those forces work for Britain, rewire our economy and our state, so that once again they serve the interests of working people. And that is why we're rewiring the state completely, ripping up the regulation that stops it being a force for good, building new homes, new towns, new infrastructure, accelerating the investment that will finally unlock the potential of every community. And let me be really clear at a moment like this. Our future is in our hands. And so, of course, we will keep calm and fight for the best deal with the US. And we've been discussing that intensely over the last few days. But we are also going to work with our key partners to reduce barriers to trade across the globe, to accelerate trade deals with the rest of the world, and champion the cause of free and open trade right across the globe. Now, just like car building, that's always been our heritage, and we're not going to turn our backs on it now. And look, when it comes to the US, I will only strike a deal if it's in our national interest, if it's the right thing to do for our security, if it protects the pounds in the pocket that working people across the country work so hard to earn for their family. That is my priority. That is always my priority. Strength abroad, security and renewal at home. And on that journey of renewal, we take another step today with our car industry. You know, there are people in this country who love to talk down our manufacturing. They say we don't make anything important anymore, that that's not Britain. Well, I would invite any of those people to come here and see what you do in this factory. Anyone who's talking down manufacturing, I'd say come here to JLR and see what you're doing. And they wouldn't say it again. Because just as I've said, when we were going around earlier, what I saw made me proud, and I hope if I feel proud of what you're doing, you are entitled to feel proud of what you are doing. This is British brilliance in the flesh. You are making cars here, but you're also representing our country with each car as it departs. That's the pride that always goes with making things, and I've said it many times before, but I will say it again. My dad worked in a factory. He was an engineer. He made things with his hands. And he taught me as I was growing up that you should value the things that we make, and that is what's brilliant about manufacturing. And manufacturing shapes the identity of a place, this place, and of a community, and of a country. And that's how it gets in your blood, which is why electric vehicles are so important. Yes, of course, it's about the climate, and you won't hear me undermining the urgency of that cause. But it's also about taking the pride, the heritage, the identity of places like this and securing it for the future. That's what previous governments never understood, the link between manufacturing and who we are as a country. But those days are over. They are finished. This is a government of industrial renewal. because my choice in this volatile world is to back British brilliance. I believe that British car companies should be at the forefront of the electric revolution. This is the race that we belong in. And so I think EV targets are a good thing. They're good for the climate, good for business certainty and investment, good for British manufacturing. But I accept those targets have to work for British manufacturers. And I don't want British firms like this one put in a position where you have to pay a hefty fine or buy credits from foreign EV companies. So today, we're going to introduce much more flexibility into EV mandates. We're going to help car companies based in Britain reach the targets in a way that supports growth. We're going to cut down any fines, which I don't want or expect to see, by 20%, and any money that's raised will be invested directly back into support for the British car industry. We're also going to take action on hybrids, because these cars make a massive difference to reducing emissions. I mean, if you drive a Toyota Prius around town, or if you work here, a Range Rover, you probably spend a lot of time in electric mode. So I think for these vehicles, a 2030 ban is too soon. So we'll push that back to 2035 for all hybrids. And that's a new step that we're taking, a new announcement today. And because we're not ideological about how we cut carbon emissions, we're also going to make sure that cleaner, efficient petrol cars sold before 2030 count towards your EV mandate. That will be good for British car manufacturers like this one here. As Rachel has said, we're also putting £2.3 billion into the British car industry, giving people tax breaks worth hundreds of millions of pounds a year to help them switch to electric, improving charging infrastructure. That's a massive factor when people are thinking about switching. And our approach means we're seeing a new public charging point popping up every half an hour, because this is the moment when we back British business and charge up the electric revolution. British electric cars running off clean British power made by British workers, British cars for British workers. And as you know, and by the way, switching to electric can also save you up to £1,100 a year. So if we get this right, it can help with the cost of living as well. But look, it's not just our car industry that we need to back. In the coming days and weeks, we're going to use industrial policy to shelter British business from the storm. Take our life sciences sector, another shining example of British brilliance, absolutely pivotal part of our export economy. But we're going to back them as well. We're going to rip up the red tape, cut the stifling bureaucracy that slows down clinical trials. Now, Britain used to be so much better than this, but we've taken our foot off the pedal. The latest data says it takes over 250 days to set up a clinical trial. But I'm going to slash that to 150. And on top of that, I can announce a new investment, up to £600 million in new health data research service, a Wellcome partnership with Wellcome Trust, strengthen the genome cluster in Cambridge, making sure that patient data in our NHS is unlocked for the public good, an opportunity for growth, but more importantly, to save lives with cutting-edge medicine. And Britain is so good at this. We saw that in the pandemic, and now we need to pick up the pace again. This country has never waited around for history to shape us. We've shaped history, and we will do so again. Take our future into our hands. Do everything necessary to defend our national interest. Strengthen our alliances. Increase our defence power. Support our businesses, jobs and workers. rebuild in defiance of a volatile world our industrial strength. That is the purpose of this government. Security and renewal. The world may be changing, but we are driving forward, securing our future with a clear plan for change. Thank you very much for listening to me this afternoon. Thank you. Now, I do want to talk to as many of you as possible, so if you're able to stay, I'd really appreciate just a few moments of your time. Before I do that, I'm just going to take some questions from the press, and then I'll come and spend some time with you. I've got a number of questions. I've got first Chris Mason from the BBC. Chris.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. The cost of living is continuing to bite for many. Now the economy feels more vulnerable. People will worry about recession, perhaps the prospect of taxes going up again, and pensions now being hit by the markets falling. Isn't the blunt truth that you can't shield people from the policies of President Trump?
Sorry, Chris, could you just say that a little bit more loudly? I couldn't quite
Sure, I just asked that last bit again. Isn't the blunt truth that you can't shield everyone from the policies of President Trump? Thank you.
Look, I think there are undoubtedly challenges here. As I say, nobody welcomes tariffs, and we don't want to get into a trade war. Obviously, we will continue to talk to the US about a deal to alleviate the situation whilst keeping all options on the table. But what's important, and in direct answer to your question, is at a moment like this, we have to shape our future. We have to step up. We can't be cowed and simply say, there are things happening in a changing world which make it more difficult, and therefore we retreat. This is the moment to seize that opportunity. And that's why I'm absolutely clear in my mind that the two things that we have to absolutely turbocharge are, one, the support we're putting into our own economy, like the measures I've announced today in relation to cars or life sciences. And they're a down payment, by the way. They're a statement of intent. That is not the extent of the turbocharging. It is simply early examples in the areas most impacted. But at the same time, having discussions with others about lowering trade barriers for free trade across the world. And we have to step into that space. We have to be prepared to lead for Britain on this, rather than be cowed by the circumstances, the challenges that are thrown at us. And that's what we will do with a driving sense of purpose. Thank you, Chris, very much. I've now got Sam.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Sam Coates, Sky News. This is a massive moment, and the markets are watching right now. Can you say, without hesitation, that you will keep Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules exactly as they are for the whole of the Parliament, and not come back at any point and say events mean that they need changing?
Well, Sam, this is a moment for stepping us up, as I've just said. The fiscal rules were put in for a purpose. And that is because Liz Truss tried an experiment with this country of putting to one side fiscal rules and checks and balances. And that caused a massive impact on the lives of working people as inflation and interest rates went through the roof. We are not prepared to inflict that kind of damage on working people. That's why we put the fiscal rules in the first place, to create that kind of stability. It's why we were able to invest at the budget and set out, as we did, the steps for the future in the spring statement. Now is the time to build on that. What we're saying about security for our economy is what we were saying going into the election, what we set out the other side, but now we've got to turbocharge it and link it to the other measures for lowering trade barriers. So the reaction to the challenges of the last few days is not for us to say, well, the first thing we'll now do is to put on one side our fiscal rules, is to remind people why we put them in place in the first place, which is to create the certainty that we need. There is enough uncertainty and insecurity as it is. Our job is to calmly and pragmatically take forward these really important steps today for our country. Thank you. Robert Peston from ITV.
Prime Minister, in the last few minutes, the American stock market has gone into bear market territory. This is now officially Donald Trump's global crash. have you told the American president that his tariffs are making the world and America poorer, and if not, why not? And if I may, the King has extended the most extraordinary honour to the American president of a second state visit. Isn't this the moment to rescind that invitation?
Well, Robert, I've been clear throughout and in all my discussions that nobody welcomes tariffs. That has been my consistent position because I think directly or indirectly they damage all of us. And that is why we're working so hard here in the UK and the measures we're taking in our economy, such as those announced today, to turbocharge the resilience of our economy and to step into that space, and why I've spent a lot of the last few days talking to international leaders about how we lower trade barriers and trade more openly as a nation. That does not detract from the fact that the US is a very close partner of the United Kingdom. On trade and the economy, of course, look at the product coming out of here going very much to North America. It's not in our interest to simply rip up that relationship any more than it is on defence and security and on intelligence sharing, where we 24/7 are operating with the US as our closest ally. So yes, we have to keep pragmatic and calm in the steps that we take, but we also need to keep a sense of perspective and context. The relationship between us and the US is a long-standing relationship that has helped to keep the peace for 80 years, and it is wrong to simply walk away from that relationship, in my view. It's a special relationship, close relationship. We now have to step up to the challenges that tariffs undoubtedly put on the table for